All right. How's everybody doing? I'm here a little bit early. So, as usual, I'm going to give a minute or two for people to jump in. Sorry it's a little bit late. My life has been pretty busy with EMT school, so I understand there's not going to be as many people tonight. Scheduled it earlier today. And again, it is kind of late, especially if you're on the East Coast. Um, but I figured better do this than nothing. And then for those of you that missed the live stream, you guys could come back later and check it out. So I'm going to give a minute or two and we'll just let people show up. I know the notification just went out that I'm going live. I do have some questions that you guys have sent me through my email or some interesting questions I found in the comments from some of my other videos. So basically, I'm going to give you an update, kind of what's going on with me, and then going to answer some questions that like I said, that people have emailed to me. If you guys want to email me questions, it could be gun questions, life advice questions. Not that I'm the most qualified to give that kind of advice, but and I'll keep your name anonymous if it's anything sensitive or by request. But you guys can email me, Mr2Actual@gmail.com, whether it's gun questions or anything else. And I'll also highlight some of the more interesting comments that I've gotten on some of my videos when I answer these for Q&A. Okay, we'll give about another minute. And again, I don't expect a lot of people tonight. This is probably mainly going to be for those of you that are going to pick this up tomorrow. And a little bit late, a little bit last minute today, but that's okay. But we'll still give a minute, and then I'm just going to get going. And then this video will kind of stand alone. It'll stand on its own, and we're making sure the audio is looking all right. Let's see if you guys should be able to hear me. So we'll see, I guess, how it turns out in the end. Let's see. Make sure it's kind of nasty. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And people may jump in as we go. But first of all, by the time that a lot of people are going to see this, because again, this is last minute, kind of late night, something that really needs attention now, if you guys haven't already done it. I personally haven't. Okay, good. We got Gun Guy Kai. Thanks for coming in. Glad you can hear me. I was a little bit worried about that with how it shows the audio on here. But getting back to it, big thing that needs to happen right now, if you guys have not done it yet, the ATF open comments for the proposed rule changes on receivers. So there's been some nonsense with the ATF. What else is new? Some of you guys have been tracking. I haven't been able to cover it adequately just because I am doing EMT school, and that has consumed my life on top of still working full time and squeezing everything in between. But the ATF has proposed rule changes on how they're going to look at receivers. So for an AR-15, of course, we're used to a lower receiver being the firearm. But they're proposing an idea to consider the upper receiver and even possibly the bolt carrier needing to be serialized with a 4473 and a background check. Absolutely. There's been a lot of comments. I've submitted my comment, but it's in the link of the description right now. In the comments, they either end in an hour or they just ended. So this is more of kind of a drive-by. Hopefully you guys have been checking the other GunTube channels and submitted a comment. The good news is if you guys missed that, we still have the open comment section on the ATF proposed rule change of pistol braces, which we're going to get to in this Q&A. That comment section is still open until September 8th. The link for that is also down in the description of this video. So I would definitely look into that. Definitely leave a comment. There are some template comments that you can copy and paste and add your own, information or a couple sentences, or you can just type it. As always, I would say be respectful. Don't get crazy on there. Get straight to the point of why considering pistol braces as stocks, why this would be such a grievance on millions of Americans who already own and possess them, or bought these guns, especially in the past year and a half during the COVID pandemic, not even realizing that they were buying something that had a brace on it, which put them in shaky ground for the future, which we're going to touch on braces as we go. Gun guy, Kentucky. I'm sorry. That should have been obvious. I just threw me off because the Y wasn't capitalized. And I've also been up for like 23 hours now, I think. Guys, if you want to do anything in the medical field, EMT school, there's a lot of studying, and your personal life and anything you like to do in your free time, including this channel, is definitely going to take a hit. We'll just put it that way. So apologize for that. That's on me. That should have been obvious. Okay, so moving along, couple updates real quick personally, and then we'll move to some administrative notes. So yeah, I'm finishing EMT school, got 1 week left, and then I'm going to take the national test. Probably about a month from now, if everything goes to plan, should be EMT certified for state and national, where I'm actually have applied to be ski patrol. Out here in Utah, we have a number of ski resorts, so always thought it'd be cool to do that in terms of avalanche prevention, medical emergencies on the mountain. So that's kind of in my short-term path right now. Just giving you guys a personal update. Again, been pretty busy. Hey, thanks for the support. Appreciate it. Yeah, man, I got out of the Army late 2019, right in time for COVID to start. I initially got a job at a Ready Gunner in Orem, Utah. Gun shop, gun range, black rifle, coffee shop, all under one house. Currently still moved up to be the gunsmith there, really an armorer. So that's been a job I've been doing since I got out of the military. But the one thing that was really missing was, still feeling like I have more to offer and more that I can serve, more that I can do. Really fulfilling for me personally. So I'd encourage everyone on a side note to, there's no such thing as being too late. You can change jobs, change careers. Don't be afraid of missing out or afraid of doing something that's uncomfortable or hard. If it's something you want to do and you want to try it out and see if that's going to be where you want to go, send it, dude. Why not? What do we all have to lose, All right, we got Shaggy Rifleman. What's going on, dude? Thanks, Kentucky. Appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it's, I want to serve, but this time I want to serve people in my community, in my state, near me. I think military members will sometimes feel, I definitely felt it in Afghanistan and Iraq when I was far away for periods of time. And it was like, you don't really get that direct correlation of what you're doing. People back home are grateful and happy and thankful, but you don't really get that. I don't want to say instant gratification, but yeah, I think serving more directly right here at home, helping my state, my community, is something that's really going to be a huge improvement for what I want to do in life. So if anyone's in the same boat, I would encourage you guys to do that as well. Let's see. Shaggy says, been prepping and squaring my stuff away last few days. Yeah. I actually, speaking of that, I just re-upped on some more medical supplies. I always have a CLS bag and a bunch of tourniquets all the time in my vehicle. When I'm range safety on the range, watching the range, taking my shift out there, always have, a bleeder kit and at least one tourniquet. Sadly, I mean, I think medical supplies and stuff is probably people don't have what they really should need. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to apply a tourniquet, and that could save someone's life. And the interesting thing about that is if a tourniquet is needed, you do not have a lot of time. So, but not just medical stuff, of course, guns, ammo, food storage, I think all of us who like to have a little extra, some guys, they're doing the doomsday prepper, have a missile silo kind of thing. For guys like you and I think we just like to have stuff on hand in our houses, and some stuff laid out. And I think all of us taking an inventory and kind of looking at ourselves in the mirror and what we have in terms of not just physical goods or equipment, but skill sets. I don't think any one of us can raise our hand and say, yeah, I'm fully prepared, man. I'm good. Like there's always bit by bit, it seems like we're always putting, chunking it away and trying to get more as we go. So that's good to hear. See, certain where you live, fighting different fight right here at home. Yeah, things are definitely, the times are changing, I guess, which we'll get to that in a little bit. Let's see, $3.5 grand in mags to round up an inventory. Yeah, for me, I've been kind of moving on magazines and at least for an AR-15 derivative, some lowers. So, I don't have an AR-10. Someday I would like one. I don't know if it will be 308 or most probably 6.5 Creedmoor, but I've got the mags that will work for both. Got lower, everything kind of set aside. So definitely requires a little bit of future planning. For those of us who have been in the gun life for a while now, we kind of see the potential for things politically, legally to go south, and a little bit of foreplanning of, what weapon systems you have versus what calibers you want to get into someday versus what guns you want to own someday. Like if FAL is on your bucket list, I'd probably at least grab a stripped receiver and some magazines, and you can figure out the rest later. That's what I'm talking about with that. Let's see. Been putting focus on getting stuff organized and been re-upping on dry fire. Yeah, any practice. I mean, guys, I think not everyone really realizes that you can actually get a lot of practice in without even going to the range or expending, precious ammunition. Dry fires, holster work. There's all kinds of, trigger reset devices and, a laser round in your chamber that when you fire it, it electronically puts it on the scoreboard. There's so many really nice, awesome training aids that we have these days where, during the COVID lockdown, you could order yourself those and just hang out at your house, no ammunition being expended, and get a lot of reps in that are still really valuable. Let's see, finished out the back room, and now we have a war room. That's pretty awesome. I would call it a gear room where I got to show you guys, but it's just 2x4s and plywood, just like we would do overseas. And everything has a place, every rack, every cubby, everything has a purpose, and it's pretty rad. Let's see, from Mark, you hear lots of YouTubers talk about being prepared and whatnot, but hardly hear about having extra spare parts, springs for firearms, food, med supplies, and whatnot. What's your take? So interestingly enough, from years, I mean, this must have been eight or 9 years ago, I did a video and it did not get a lot of views. And even if I pull it up now, it probably doesn't have a lot of views. But it talked about spare parts. Why do we need them? What kind of spare parts we should have? How we long-term package them and grease and organize them and make sure we know what we have, where it is, and it's properly stored from rust. Definitely since becoming a gunsmith, my spare parts collection has seriously exploded. Now I only at least keep spare parts for guns that I have. So I mean, I've got enough 1911 parts. I could probably make two 1911s from what I have. I mean, I'd have to fit all the parts and actually build it, but AR parts, um, yeah, I've got enough to, so anything high wear, um, bolts, firing pins, different types of springs, extractors. I take it a little next level, like I talked about in that video from years ago, and I still stand behind it, where not just the spare parts, but I also have armor's tools, or at least basic armor's tools to service the weapon. I have training manuals where, it's like if someday, decades from now, I'm not around anymore and I passed all of my guns, spare parts, magazines, ammo, I passed everything to my future family and I wasn't around or able to train them. How does this work? How do we use this thing? There's training manuals. Most of them are military training manuals that if you're willing to sit there and read them, they will tell you how it works, preventative checks and measures, how to maintain it, how to clean it, how to use it, how it works. So, um, armor's tools, spare parts, especially on high wear items, you know, uh, training manuals, packing them for long term storage. Those are all outstanding things to do. Um, Everyone talks about extra food and things like that. I would always encourage rotating your storage, and I do this with ammunition as well. So let's say I have 5,000 rounds of 5.56, just standard 193. Um, so if I want to continually practice, I'm not going to eat into, I call it my baseline. So minimum amount is 5,000 rounds of 5.56 as an example for that caliber. Maybe I score 200 rounds of Winchester 193 at the range. What I'll do is I'll break out 200 rounds from storage. Some of the oldest 200 rounds I have, I'll put the new box of 200 rounds of 5.56 that I just got. That now goes in the storage, and now I have 200 rounds from old storage to train with. And that way I can continue to train. I maintain a baseline amount quantity of rounds for that caliber. And as I'm acquiring, new ammunition, that now goes in the storage, and then the older stuff is getting used. So you don't necessarily need to do that, especially if you're, going to properly store ammunition in sealed ammo cans or any way that it's hermetically sealed. So you don't have to worry about moisture, oxidation, anything like that. But that's something I do. I would do it with food as well. Rotate through the food. I always take a Sharpie, and if it's canned goods or dry goods, whatever it is, I'll write with the date on the can or the item of when I purchased it. Everything is dressed and covered by date on the shelf. And then it's like, oh, let's do some green beans tonight. Let's use some of that. Then I'll go to the store the next day, pick up green beans, put the date on it, put it in the back, and the night before I took from older storage. So rotating that through, having a way to store water. I think the cheapest and easiest way for most people is probably going to Costco or Walmart and just picking up huge cases of bottled water. And that's what kind of sucks, especially if you're into the environment and not wasting and having all this plastic going into the trash and everything. But I got to tell you, that is a really cheap and effective way to store potable, clean drinking water for a long time. As long as it's in a cool, dry environment, it's out of direct sunlight. And again, you're cycling cases of water. Pretty effective way. Plus, you can easily add, single serving coffee or mixed drink in there. And now when you're done with it, you have a container that you can use for any number of purposes. So maybe not the most environmentally friendly, but very effective if stored correctly, very cheap. And water, I think, especially in this country, how You just turn on the faucet and you've got clean drinking water that you can cook and clean and drink. And it's not going to kill you. You're not going to get sepsis or get a disease or something. I think we take it for granted. You can just go to your kitchen or bathroom and turn on the faucet or turn on the shower and there's water. So I think people underestimate that. Definitely water storage as well. Probably, I don't really want to say above all else, but probably above all else, there's two big places where I see a lot of people deficient when it comes to prepping. And I'm just going to be real with you guys. I see this day in, day out. I have some regulars and some really hardcore dudes that drop like 20 grand a month with us at the gun shop. And I interface with a lot of like really serious preppers. And they've got everything on lockdown. They've got generators, they've got solar, they've got food storage for a year and a half. They've got everything, they've got it, you name it, and you're jealous of it. But there's two things that I frequently see that a lot of preppers kind of mess up. Thing number one, physical fitness. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that, I'm Mr. Olympian or like I'm a CrossFit, Olympic gold medalist here. But I'm saying like I can carry my own body weight. I can carry other bodies. I can carry weight. Keeping cardio, stay off cigarettes or smoking, cardiovascular capability, strength, being able to pull your own body weight and support yourself, being able to walk, for 15 miles a day if needed, up and down hills if it's a crazy situation. So physical fitness, that's a huge failure point I see with a lot of preppers. That it's like, okay, you have this like cool mystery Rand rucksack, you've got this heavy as hell AR-10, and you've got your FNX 45 sidearm, plus your go bag and your fanny pack and your cool guy, whatever it is, chest rig, and then you've got your level 4 SAPI plate, plate carrier and all this cool guy stuff. Okay, grab what you can carry and let's go. We're going to do like a 12-click movement through the dark, up and down the hills, through the vegetation and the trees and the streams and everything. There's a lot of guys that are not ready for something like that. Now that's kind of extreme, but in a way it's kind of not. So failure point number one, fitness, definitely. Again, you don't have to be like an Olympic athlete, but at the same time, you got to be able to carry your own weight. You got to have a little bit of endurance, cardiovascular capability, and you got to be able to truck your stuff around. Failure point number two is skills, whether it's, primitive fire building a fire. If you're lucky, you have a Bic lighter from the gas station, maybe some lint or some dry foliage that you can build into a fire. Medical skills. Most guys don't even own a tourniquet, or they do have. I've seen it the other way, where guys pay thousands of dollars because their medic buddy or their paramedic buddy said, "Hey, this is the kit you want to get," and they'll even have their buddy help them kind of fine tune it. But they don't know how to use any of it. Outside of a Band-Aid, they don't know what they're doing with gauze or pressure dressings, what we used to call Israelis, tourniquets, SAM splints, or how to splint a limb, different ways to do it, junctional dressings, like the things that kind of matter, especially if things are kinetic or there's bullets flying around or massive car accident, falling off a cliff, whatever it is. Skill sets, fire building, medical, definitely shooting. I got to say, most people, they drive to a gun range, take their guns out of the cases, they put up a target, whatever yards downrange, and it's a simple, the target is always in front of me. When they say, okay, the range is hot, I do my shooting. When the range is cold, I unload and put everything down, and I'm just putting holes in paper or shooting steel that they may have at the range. And that, for most Americans, that's really what they do when they shoot. Now, that's better than nothing, and it certainly helps with familiarizing you with whatever guns you have. It definitely helps if you have optics, red dot, iron sights, anything that you're really trying to dial in and get used to your holdovers and hold unders, depending on the distances you're shooting at. But knowing cover versus concealment, knowing how to move as a team, even if it's a 2 or 3 person team, knowing how to communicate when everything is loud as hell and everything sucks. Um, any type of training that you guys could seek out if you've got the money to go to like Thunder Ranch and train with Clint Smith, Haley Strategic, any of those guys, Aaron Cowan at Sage Dynamics, any of those guys that have some real world experience that can teach you things that you're not going to find in a book. And they're going to have you shooting in uncomfortable positions, up and around barricades, in and outside and around vehicles, up and down walls, more dynamic stuff that's a little more realistic than putting a piece of paper at a known distance, shooting it. And that's okay. We got, all of our training. So physical fitness and skills. Those are probably the 2 big things I see a lot of preppers messing up all the time, sadly. Okay, let me get back to your comments. Let's see. How long can an MRE be kept? I know the shelf life. This is from Giant Purple People Eater 97. How long can MRE be kept? I know the shelf life is about 10 years, but can they be kept longer in a climate controlled area longer? The answer is yes. And actually, when I had to do field sanitation. That was one of the many things. Usually it's like first sergeant would be like, hey, battalion needs us to send 2 guys to this thing and you're not doing anything. So you're one of our 2. It was a, hey, you kind of thing. And it was field sanitation. So we talked about water, everything else. But one of the things we actually talked about was looking at MREs and being able to gauge if they're still good or not. And one of the things, if you have a case of 12 MREs, you're going to notice an orange sticker on the outside of the case, or at least you should, if it's actual legitimate MREs and not like a civilian knockoff or whatever. So that orange sticker is going to let you know if it starts, I believe, if the center starts getting black in that sticker, it's either the center or the outer ring gets black. You guys are going to have to Google it because this was years ago. That lets you know it's had too much heat and or too much sun beating down on it. So that's one way you can tell. Another way you can tell is open one up and, don't eat it, but open it up, smell it, look at it, check it. By and large, proper actual military MREs, if you can get your hands on some cases of those, or even like I have a local surplus store local to me that actually sells individual items. So you can get your cheese spread, you can get your tuna, you can get your cheese tortellini main entree. Like you can actually get piece by piece, or you can just buy them as a sealed unit. But in a cool, dry environment, outside of the sun, in the shade, cool, dry environment, proper storage, MREs will go probably 20 to 30 years. But if you have anything that's suspect, I would definitely open one up, smell it, check it, look at it, make sure it's good before you just start diving into it. But MREs, if they're stored right, they're going to last quite some time. So let's see. Let's see. Patriot is here. How you doing? Doing pretty well. You missed the beginning, and that's okay. Like I said in the beginning, this is kind of late, last minute. So got one more week left of EMT school. I apologize to all of you for the uploads have just been really stagnant since EMT school started. Definitely a drain on my life. If I'm not in school or still working full time or studying, I'm basically sleeping. Like that's all I do at this point until it's over. Also moving into doing ski patrol this winter. In Utah, we got a lot of ski resorts, and always wanted to do that, help people out on the mountain, throw explosives and avalanche control and all that. It's funny in the job requirements, it was like, it listed all the stuff you'd expect. You got to be an EMT or higher. And then in there, it said needs to, be willing and competent in using explosives and working with helicopters. And I'm like, hey, dude, I have experience with explosives and in helicopters. So I've probably got a jump start. I have to learn how you guys do it and what kind of explosives we're using, but that's awesome. So that's what's going on with me. Everything's pretty good. Let's see, from People Eater, we got also in a shit hits the fan scenario, what caliber would be more accessible, 760 by 39 or 223? And as a gunsmith, I'm going to say or 556. 223, 556, not the same. Very close, but some very important differences. But long story short, if you have an AR or a rifle chambered in 556 NATO or 223 Wild, as long as the barrel was produced correctly, quality control and everything was good, you should be able to shoot both fine. These days, you kind of have to go out of your way to find an AR-15 that is only 223 Remington. Old school Colt Sporters, old school Bushmasters. I think the Remington R-15 still does it. Outside of that, chances are you got a 5.56 and you're fine with both of those. Anyway, back to the point of the question. The answer is I think both are going to be very accessible. AR-15, the most common rifle in the United States in use today. Anywhere that you would use a rifle, you're going to see an AR-15 there. Hunting, self-defense, law enforcement, or military to this day. Competition shooting, you name it, an AR-15 is there. And more often than not, most of the time, it's in 5.56. Lucky for us, at least when pricing has started to come down. But when pricing is normal, for about $300, you can stack up on 1,000 rounds of 5.56. Try doing that with 300 blackout, 308, virtually anything else. It's going to suck. So 5.56, AR-15s in general, AR-15 magazines, and 5.56 ammunition, all of that very common. So I think that would be a very dependable, confident choice if you're looking for parts, magazines, ammunition that's going to fuel your guns and give pretty valuable trade value to trade ammo for or services, or hey, I've got a gallon of gasoline, I'll trade you for 100 rounds of 5.56, whatever. Pretty confident bet. 7.62 by 39 is also going to be the same. I mean, God knows how many spam cans of 7.62 by 39 actual Russian corrosive surplus ammo that are still just hanging around. Currently still in production. That's never going to stop. You can also bulk up on that really cheap. It is a little heavier. The magazines have that awkward banana shape just because the bell on that case makes it a little harder to carry in a chest rig or plate carrier, but it can be done. But either way, 7.62 by 39 and 5.56 or 223, both of those would be a very reliable, safe bet. And in fact, if I was pressed and I had like, hey, I need a couple rifles that are going to be like the rifles for my family, like us, if shit hits the fan, I would encourage it to be an AK of some kind in 7.62 by 39 and or an AR-15 and 5.56. You're really not going to go wrong with either of those, honestly. Both are incredibly cheap to bulk up on for your storage, incredibly common. SKSs and AKs, they're everywhere still to this day. So finding parts, mags, whatever, ammo, same for an AR-15, as long as it's in 5.56. Yeah, both of those are outstanding for all of those reasons. Let's see, got a new case for my Glock. It's an exact clone of the OEM case, but it's Tiffany blue with white latches. Not important, but it matches my pistol. Hey, you know what? I don't know. I mean, there's some guys that get weird about like, oh, there shouldn't be, like a blue or a pink gun. Like people shouldn't go out there and like Cerakote their guns to, to be purple or some like, oh, that's blasphemy. It's like, dude, it's your property. So do it up the way you want to do it up. And, the end of story. Like, someone may not like it or whatever. It doesn't matter. So I'm in the camp of like, hey, it's your money. You're buying it. It's also your freedoms, your rights. If you want an AR-15 that's pink or whatever you like, who cares? It's your property. Just send it. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. I just shared out your stream. You might get a couple more viewers. Thanks, Shaggy. Appreciate that. Any new gun videos coming up after school? How's the Black Bess coming? The Black Bess is still, I built it and then went back to the drawing board. And then partly the finance EMT school ended up selling it because nothing on it was unique or special. It was all easily replaceable. And then it has me thinking about some other things. So the Black Bess is still a work in project. For those who don't know what we're talking about, it's a project that I initiated the idea for back in late 2019, early 2020. The concept being, you know, the brown bess musket was very commonly used in the American Revolution by your standard colonist, also the Continental Army. It was kind of the everyman's arm. So if we were going to do that concept in a modern kind of tone, what would that rifle look like? And the project is still a 5.56 AR-15, still your standard direct impingement, no external piston or anything like that. But exactly what we're going to do, especially when inventory still kind of sucks on parts, but especially when it was like bad, we kind of had to compromise with, okay, we can't just put out like a build sheet and then it's like, okay, everybody go get exactly these parts and you can build your own Black Bess. We had to move into, okay, these are the types of barrels we're looking for. Um, these are the types of things or features. So as long, if you're sticking, for the handguard, for the barrel, for the bolt carrier group, for the lower, for the trigger, like as long as you're sticking within kind of these like defined lanes for each part, you know, any one of us could build a Black Bess, and there could be millions of them, which there are, and they could all be different or unique, but they all kind of conform to that standards list. So the Black Bess is still a work. It's definitely a project for sure. So we're still working on that. Let's see. Constitutional carry and Second Amendment sanctuaries are splitting faster than ever. Yeah, so our state went constitutional carry in May. We also had, I think it was actually all of the Utah sheriffs sign a letter saying they're not going to enforce any national or federal stuff that may come down in the future. There's a lot of states like that. I definitely credit Virginia, kind of probably Texas, Montana, and Virginia kind of really pushing that envelope initially. Virginia kind of more mainstream, which I did a couple videos on when the peaceful, not really protest, I would say, but gathering that happened in Richmond a year and a half ago at this point now, back early 2020. So, but yeah, sanctuary cities, sanctuary, sheriffs on board with the Second Amendment, states that are just not willing to mess with it, especially Texas recently. It's definitely kind of had a, seems like the 10th Amendment has kind of had a resurgence by way of the second and some other issues like immigration and everything else. So pretty hopeful to see where we continue what's going to happen with that. Okay. I've been carrying legally since July 1st. Tennessee got permitless carry restricted in like June. Yeah. So more states are doing it. My thing is, I like the constitutional carry. I want to see more of it. For states like California, New York, and stuff like that, it's literally going to take the Supreme Court, which is actually on the notes of things we're going to talk about. But I still do encourage people to go get the training for sure and go get a concealed carry permit, because if you want to do a road trip or fly or travel, having a permit that the state you're visiting has reciprocity with is going to help you ultimately when you're traveling. Because if you're a constitutional carry state and you're just hanging out in your state, that's fine. But if you have a road trip or travel to other states, unless they have constitutional carry in their state, there's nothing really for you there. Also, constitutional carry, even if it's a thing, at least in my state, there are some limitations on that. If you don't have a concealed carry permit and you're just riding on constitutional carry, like can't have a round in the chamber, there's some other stuff that kind of comes with it, versus if you do have a concealed carry permit in my state, even though we have constitutional carry, there's a couple other things that you can now do because you've done the training and everything else. So would still definitely encourage the training, would still encourage people to get the permit, even if your state went constitutional carry, because if you read the fine print, may not necessarily be the same thing, whether it's you're just riding on constitutional versus you actually went out and got a permit. Okay, so let's get to the topics at hand. So first thing about pistol braces, for those who weren't here in the beginning, the ATF comment section is still open for pistol braces, and the madness, the sketchiness that was going on with Q and the ATF considering trying to reclassify them as stocks and then make everyone register their AR pistols as SBRs. So if you want to do a comment, strongly encourage that comment period ends September 8th. So we'll definitely get it in. You can find a link to the ATF's comment section in the description right now of this video. There's plenty of sample template letters where you can copy and paste, kind of modify or add on anything else you want to say, or you can just kind of send it and just type it yourself. I would just make sure it's respectful, nothing crazy. We're putting comments in to show the ATF that we are law-abiding citizens. This is our right. There's millions of pistol braces out there, and we're not doing anything wrong. You said it was cool, so the industry has been selling guns with this product for almost 10 years now. There's millions of them out there. We're not crazy people. We're not weirdos. Just leave us alone. So there's templates if you don't want to kind of ride by the seat of your pants and type it out and have to worry about spelling errors and stuff. And you can just copy and paste, put your name in there, but you can also submit those comments anonymously. You don't have to put your name. So, for those who would feel more comfortable, but I would definitely encourage that. Also, for those who don't know what we're talking about, let's see. So this right here is, let me actually turn it around. Actually, okay, so this right here is, for those who don't know, this is a brace. This is a stabilizing brace for a pistol. So according to our federal government and the 1934 National Firearms Act and follow-on legislation, what you see here, this is actually a pistol. This is not a rifle. This is not a registered short-barreled rifle. This is not a rifle as per the definition in the law. This has a 10.5-inch barrel. This is a pistol. And this is not a stock. This is a brace. So the whole idea being, you've got this cool Velcro strap, and put your hand through here, put your forearm through here, strap it down, and now you can actually shoot this one-handed, as the law describes the definition of what a pistol is, to primarily be shot one-handed. The brace in general was designed, or at least this Velcro kind of situation here was designed to help those with physical disabilities, wounded warriors, people that want to have a pistol. They want to shoot a pistol like everyone else, but they have physical limitations or disabilities that are preventing them from doing it and shooting their AR or AK pistol, whatever it is, as the way the law defines what the pistol is, to shoot it one-handed. So there has been drama over the years about, you can shoulder it, it's fine. And then we went through a period of time, if you purposely put this to your shoulder and shoot it that way, purposely misuse the product, that's going to constitute you spontaneously in that moment illegally manufacturing an unlawful, unregistered SBR, short-barreled rifle. And then the ATF backtracked on that. That was doomed to fail for them. So currently where we're at, braces are still cool. Being a pistol, it cannot have a vertical foregrip, which is why you see an angled foregrip on this. The Magpul AFG is good to go. and actually it handles better than like Knight's broomstick or a vertical foregrip anyway. But there's also been some talk about, well, hey, it's, you can't have a magnified optic on there, or we need to take like a holistic approach on the whole build. So we can't simply tell you that the brace is fine and everything else on the gun is fine. We need to kind of see it to determine if it's bad or good, to let you know if it's a felony possession or if it's lawfully just a pistol. So that's currently what we're fighting. So that's why it's really important for you guys to submit the comments. Again, the link for the ATF comment section is in the description of this video. Again, pick up a template, copy and paste, or write your own. Again, we're going to be respectful, professional, law-abiding citizens when we make those comments. So those are some things I would definitely jump on if you guys have not left a comment already. Okay, so I've got three, let's see. Yeah, I've got three major things that I want to talk with you guys about tonight, and got my notes. So we've got bad news, medium news, and then good news. So what do you guys want first? This is my Q&As for those who are new, because I can see some newer guys tonight. This is kind of, you guys can interact with me. We kind of do a state of the Second Amendment, little recap, talk about some things going on with the channel. So now we're moving into that segment where we're gonna talk about state of the Second Amendment, some recent happenings that we should all be aware of. So we got some bad news, we've got some medium news, and we've got some should be good news. So whatever you guys want first, let me catch up. Let's see. Let's see. What do I think about the Afghanistan situation? Yeah, that's actually the final part of this live stream that I want to end with, because I've spent a lot of time, or at least 9 months of my life there. I don't want to get too much into it right now, but we're definitely going to be talking about it at the conclusion once we get through all the Second Amendment stuff. But I've definitely got some shit to say about that. We'll just leave it at there for now. Let's see. 1934 NFA and the 86 Hughes Amendment are both ancient and unconstitutional government programs that need to be done away with. I would refine that and say laws, because they're not programs. They are, in fact, on the books. They're laws. But yes, I agree. Guns are literally more American than baseball, football, and apple pie. Yeah, I think guns have been around longer than baseball, football, and apple pie, as far as I know. Okay, let's see. Patriot wants to go from bad to good. Okay, so here we go. Okay, starting with the bad. Let's look who it is, everybody. It's HR 4953. This bill was proposed by Representative Ted Deutsch. I think that's how I pronounce it. He's out of Florida. He's a congressman there. I think the 22nd district. It has 8 co-sponsors in the House, and it is called the National Firearms Amendment Act of 2021. So we have the National Firearms Act of 1934, which I think we're all familiar with. But this is HR 4953. We actually just got the text of this recently. It was being kind of talked about, but now we actually have the text to look through, saving you guys the details of reading through that, just getting to the point. National Firearms Amendment Act of 2021 essentially works, the bottom line up front on this is they want to take every semi-automatic rifle and shotgun that has detachable magazines and turn it into an NFA item, which would require registration of that firearm with the federal government and paying a $200 tax stamp fee. So what you have to do to get a suppressor, or what you have to do to e-file a Form 1 and register, create an SBR. What you have to do if you have a lot of money and you want to buy a transferable full auto machine gun, same thing. Register with the federal government, and you have to pay a $200 tax stamp. And again, they want to do this for all rifles and shotguns that have a detachable magazine. And they actually did a pretty decent job, as much as I hate to say it, defining what they call a magazine, and what they regard as detachable. So basically, you have to take the gun apart, or they call it the action of the gun apart, to release the magazine, and then they're not going to consider that detachable. So essentially, standard AR-15s, AKs, 1022. Yeah, it would be a 1022, because the only thing they carved out, or the only exception they made, was for tubular fed 22 long rifle rifles. So if you have a 22 lever action rifle or something like that, it would not count. But if you have any semi-automatic shotgun or rifle that has a detachable magazine, which they really defined well, that would now need to be registered with the federal government and have a $200 tax stamp. So yeah, that's the bad news. The mini good news with that is it's only has 8 co-sponsors on it. It's just kind of chilling in the House. I think it's really unlikely something like this is going to have any chance in hell of making it through both the House and the Senate. They agree on the same thing with the filibuster. So the reason why I'm really bringing it up is not only because it's happening and it's really egregious, but I really don't think it's going to go through this time. But there may come a time in the future where they're going to dust this off. Hey, remember back in 2021, we tried this thing? Well, the time seems right. Let's try it again. And it might face better chances later in the future. Another reason why I want to highlight it is if you guys have forums or different Facebook groups or whatever, and you see Californians that have their AR-15s that look like a disaster with their Monster Man grips and all their crazy stuff on it, just to make it legal so they can go compete in competitions or go hunting or whatever it is. Don't make fun of them, because what they do in California at one point or another, that's kind of the testing ground. So Californians, the more conservative or gun owning Californians that are in it to win it, just like you and I, and they're falling under this legislation and laws in California. Don't laugh at them or joke about it, because they're suffering under that while the people who created this kind of fine tune it, see what the problems were, how they can cut through any loopholes or make it tighter. And then they try to run it on the national stage. So this is a direct example of exactly that happening. Also, incidentally, in California, California residents by the California government are not allowed to have NFA items. So they can't do suppressors. They can't do short-barreled shotguns. They can't do transferable machine guns. They can't do SBRs. So if they're featureless AR-15s that are legal with the state of California now, if this got passed and they would have to register it as an NFA item, the thing that California says is cool because of the crazy features they had to do, modifications to it, but now they have to register it as an NFA item. Well, Californians can't have NFA items. So do you think California would be like, oh, it's okay, we'll grandfather that in? No, they would be like, well, you guys have to give them up. Here's the address to your local police station. Give it up. So this is just bad news all around. The only good news, like I said, there's not a tremendous chance, at least this time around, that it's going to pass at all. But I suspect we're going to see this again in the future when it's politically convenient. Yeah, the compliance, Patriot wants to know, wonders what the compliance rate would be for a registration. So we see tiny examples of it. I think there's 2 big examples right now that come to mind. One is Colorado, when they passed their magazine capacity ban, so you could only have magazines of 15 rounds or less. But if you had them before, they were grandfathered in. So that's not a registration thing. I study that more for a compliance thing, which is to say no one cares and the cops don't care, most of them. And even in the ones who do, they have no way of proving that you had that magazine prior to the date they passed it years ago. So speaking simply on complying with it, yeah, I don't see that being widespread. The next thing is complying with the registry or getting into the registry voluntarily. The next thing it reminds me of is after Sandy Hook, Connecticut passed a law where within the state, everyone who has an AR-15, AK, they defined it to be basically ARs, AKs, anything like that. You have to show up and voluntarily register it with the state of Connecticut. Based on how many guns have been sold in Connecticut for many, many years, and based on how many ARs and AKs were being sold out of gun shops for years, at least the relative data they had based on trying to use that and estimate how many people had ARs and AKs and stuff versus how many actually showed up to register, they predicted, I think it was a 2 to 4% compliance rate or a 2 to 4% participation rate. And that's even being kind of liberal with the percentages there. So, you know, same thing with bump stocks. President Trump fiercely went after bump stocks like hardcore, and he got bump stocks banned. So how many people destroyed them or gave them up? Some did, versus how many still just kind of quietly buried that in the back of the gun safe. That's what happened. And then when Trump's bump stock ban got reversed recently, all these people coming out with bump stocks now. So it's like, magically all of a sudden, it's just like, I remember as a kid going to gun shows, mainly during the Clinton crime ban or the crime bill, the assault weapons ban. And it was like right before the sunset in 2004, right before the Freedom Tap just got opened up larger. Gun shows were kind of sad, normal, 10-round mags, ARs that had no bayonet lugs, no muzzle devices, anything. And then it was like the next month we went to a gun show again. And that was right after the ban had sunsetted. And all of a sudden there's magazines and ARs and you name it. It's like, wow, where did all this come from all of a sudden? It's not like, the manufacturers just went 24 hours pumping out, non-ban era guns. No, it's people had them the whole time. They just kept it hit. So let's see. Jim Naz, welcome. Why do we need bump stocks? I've actually talked a little bit in detail about this. I'm going to try to lower myself so my back doesn't hurt as much. I talked about this in one of my first almanacs, which is like my solo podcast, which I haven't done one in a while. So if you guys want one, let me know. Where I talked about, in the military, we had M4s and later got M4A1s converted. So we had, safe semi-burst, and eventually we got the A1, so safe semi-auto. And all throughout training, infantry OSUT or one station unit training at Fort Benning, semi is all you do. That is it. And once I got to my unit, semi is all you do. That is it. And once I got to Afghanistan, and then eventually after that deployment went to Iraq as well. For my whole time in the Army, all 5 years active duty as an infantryman, semi is the way. Semi-automatic, if you actually want to hit what you're aiming at, you want to conserve rounds, you don't know how long this gunfight is going to last. You might have a firefight that's over in a minute or two. You might have firefights that are going on for 8 hours on and off again. You don't know how long it's going to last. So the last thing you want to do is just blow off your, half of your combat load, 3.5 magazines in the course of 2 minutes. Semi-auto is the way to go. It conserves ammo. You can actually aim and hit stuff you want to hit, especially at distance. That is not me saying the M4A1 or military M4s should not have, select fire capability. There are definitely times, it's not a million examples, but I can think of a couple examples, and one that I was in where it's like, you know what, the individual rifleman with the ability to flip it on auto and get stuff done, it's kind of an emergency, break glass in case of emergency option, but there are reasons to have it in a military context. But 99.5% of the time, semi-auto for everything. That's how you actually hit stuff and get things done. But the bump stock is, for me, the question of, and I got this when the bump stock was invented, and then when they were talking about banning it, and then when they banned it, we've kind of seen it come up again recently. But like, what's the purpose of the bump stock? What is it really worth defending? Like, is it really worth anything? Is it worthy of our time? Should we really care about this? Now, personally, from a ergonomic usefulness utility standpoint, I have no purpose or need for a bump stock. I did when they were legal, right after they got invented and they started to flow out in the market. I had a buddy who had one, actually had two, and I shot their ARs with a bump stock. And I was like, yeah, dude, I mean, like, sure, it's cool and it's fun that you can kind of make it shoot faster. But, if you're in a shit show and everything sucks, like, you can't trust, like, there's kind of a method to the madness. And, in a adrenaline packed, shitty situation, you're not going to be keyed into it. Like, this is just, dude, this is a range toy, is the impression I always left walking away from a bump stock shooting one. The importance to me is not the utility or usefulness of it. The importance of it for me is that it does not fit into the legally defined definition of what a machine gun is according to the laws of our country. We are a nation of laws. We are a constitutional republic, and we have a constitution. We have our laws. And if we're looking at something that does not at all, word for word, just, it's not what is legally defined by the 1934 NFA as a machine gun, I don't care that I personally think it's a range toy, and I have never wanted one, have never owned one, don't care for them from a utility standpoint. I don't care. My opinion doesn't matter. My feelings don't matter about what I think of the product. At the end of the day, we are a country of laws, and the law specifically defines what a machine gun is, and the bump stock is not it. And in fact, the ATF and went through their technology division, where they said this is not a machine gun. Yeah, it allows the user with a little bit of practice to shoot the gun faster, but as defined by the law, you are doing one shot with every singular function of the trigger. One shot per one trigger pull. It's just happening really fast. But this itself is legally not, if we're following the law, which we should, this is not a machine gun. And of course, President Trump kind of muscled over that and wanted to get them banned, and he did. But at least for that period of time, the ATF even looked at it and they determined, put out the letter like, yeah, this is not, according to the law, this is not a machine gun. So, I want people to understand, as a former infantryman, with my training and experience, and also what I do civilian side now, semi-auto is the way. If we're talking a handheld carbine or rifle, semi-auto is the way. That is how you get stuff done in an intelligent, effective manner. Having bump stocks or binary triggers or things to make things fun as a range toy, God bless America, go do it. Those are not legally in the definition of what they consider a machine gun to be. And I don't care that they got their feelers hurt about it. I don't care that they particularly don't like it. I don't care that it makes them feel sad or scared. I care about the law. And if it is not a machine gun by the law, and the ATF even came out and said so, then that's why I care. So I just want people to understand my distinction, my separation of, I don't think it has utility. I would never own one, never have, not interested. But it should remain, because we're a nation of laws, period. So hopefully that clarifies that a little bit. Plus, I would also side note that with, when people are like, why do you need this? Why do you need that? And I'm not trying to come at you, Jim, but I'm just for future discussions, because I'll have people, why do you need a bump stock? Well, let's keep going down the slope. Why do you need an AR-15? Why do you need 30-round magazines? Why do you need? It's like, dude, it's not the Bill of Needs, man. It's the Bill of Rights. So I don't care that you don't like the fact I have an AR-15. It's my right. It's kind of the mindset when I'm not talking about bump stocks or Jim, but talking about in a broader sense, when you get hit with, why do you need this? Why do you need that? It's like, well, you may feel like you don't need it, but I don't care what you feel like I need. It's the Bill of Rights. It's not the Bill of Needs or what you think I need. It's the Bill of Rights. So just throwing it out there. And yeah, again, Jim, I'm glad you're here. I'm not trying to shit on you at all. Nothing but love, but just kind of expounding way further than what you were asking. So sorry, everybody, for the tangent. From Patriot, I'm glad that what you were talking about is highly unlikely to get anywhere. It's great to bring it up, though. We need to remain vigilant. Yep. Second Amendment stuff. Always vigilant. It's like living on the coast. If you have a house on the beach, you always need to worry about, tsunamis, hurricanes, earthquakes. It's like you don't want it to happen, and you're glad most of the time it doesn't, but you kind of need to worry about that all the time. Let's see. Wait, the bump stock ban is gone now. I would re-clarify on that. Last I understood, when it just got through, I forgot what appeals court, they actually said the Trump administration banning the bump stock was actually unlawful, or was not the proper legal process for that. So I don't know if it has been completely reversed. All I know is I see a bunch of bump stocks now. Whether those people are following the law or not, I don't know. My official advice would be to check the statute, check the law, and when in question, consult a lawyer that's well-versed, well-practiced in your state with gun laws to be sure on that. So I know that what the court decision said, but I don't know if that actually reversed it yet. So if you lost your bump stock in a boating accident, don't pull it out from the water yet. You know what I'm saying? Just double check. Okay. I want a machine gun mainly for enjoyment, really. Yeah, having a full auto transferable machine gun would be awesome. I'm blessed to work at a SOT full auto range. So we have an MP7, MG42, 240 Bravo, 249 SAW, AK, AKM, RPK. We just got an RPD, which is pretty cool. M4, MP5. We've got all kinds of full auto stuff. And trying to maintain and repair all of those various weapon systems is just a nightmare. I'll just tell you right now, because they all work differently. And especially for things like the MP7 and the MG42, finding parts is almost impossible. So, getting a full auto is one thing, but keeping it running, especially if it's an old, like if you bought a Sturmgewehr 44 transferable full auto, you better take care of that thing. Probably don't shoot it, burn the barrel down and shoot it into oblivion, because, finding spare parts, you're probably going to have to go to a machine shop, pay a lot of money for them to try to make you a part that may or may not even work. So ask me how I know. So yeah, having a machine gun would be cool, but yeah, there's a lot of other stuff that comes with it. Let's see. Thank you for your service from Jim. Thank you for your support. Any stock with a recoil observing feature can be the same as a bump stock. I agree with you about the law. Yeah, I mean, and there's dudes who do the belt loop thing. I've seen guys using a standard rubber band wrapped around the mag well. And just to comply with YouTube here, I'm not suggesting anyone do it. I'm not depicting, detailed instructions on anything. But there's fully, completely legal ways that involve your thumb or household objects, and it is not unlawful, to my knowledge at all, that can make it happen as well. So I mean, it's it's like a giant game of whack-a-mole. Like if your mission was to ban anything like bump stocks or binary triggers or anything that would allow the shooter assist them in having a more rapid rate of fire while still complying with the letter of the law, it's like whack-a-mole, man. Which actually is one of our next topics. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, Mr. 2A, I heard that ACLU now thinks the 2A is racist or something like that. Have you heard about that? No. That's one of the things that always kind of makes me sad, but it is what it is. ACLU, the American Civil Liberties, ACLU, they don't really, I don't want to say they don't care about the Second Amendment. I'm just going to say that they don't care about the Second Amendment, which is really tragic because I think the Second Amendment is just as important as the Fourth Amendment, which is just as important as the First Amendment. And, like a buffet line, picking and choosing which American civil liberties are important to them and what they're going to go after versus what they just leave in the dust. It's kind of, it is what it is. If anything, it's kind of ironic because gun control never really came about until, historically speaking, the wrong kinds of people got their hands on guns. And then, racist governors and racist administrations at the time, especially Wilson, some others, that's when they started to crack down on guns, which is disgusting. But it is true. So it's kind of ironic. Gun control comes from racism and Jim Crow era stuff, that they were fine with everybody doing whatever they wanted until certain people got guns, and now it was a problem. It's disgusting. And it's disgusting that it started there, and we're, people are still pushing that agenda today. It's really, I just wish people would, you don't have to get a degree in history. It's definitely not profitable. But I just wish people would really understand more on that, at least understand history a little better. It probably would prevent a lot of people from making the same mistakes, such as the Taliban. I said I wasn't going to talk about Afghanistan until the end, but I will say this one thing. First thing they did when they took Kabul, they started rounding up everyone's guns. Oh, I know you guys felt unsafe under the previous government. But now that we're in charge, there's no reason to feel unsafe. So you don't need these guns anymore. We're coming house to house. We're just grabbing them up. It's pretty interesting how every time you want ultimate control, like literally the first or second thing you do is start taking the guns. Kind of interesting how that works. Yeah. Doomed to repeat history. Let's see. Daniel Jones in the house. What's up, dude? Yes, all guns are bad. Okay. For those who don't know, he's saying that sarcastically. I'm sure you guys picked up on that. Hopefully everything's going well. I know we just chalked recently, but let's see. All right, Jim's peacing out. So good to have you, Jim. Again, wasn't shitting on you earlier, and I'm glad you're here. So look forward to the future having you in here. Let me be frank, early 70s. It might have been a response to something I was saying. But Frank, if you want to come back, let me know what you're talking about. Let's see. How late do you want to stream tonight? Out of curiosity. I actually set aside like 2 hours. So we still got at least another 50 minutes or so. So I figured I'd put some more max effort into this, give you guys some more time for those who want to stay or for those who are going to watch this later. Just because, like we've talked about, as you guys know, I have not been uploading frequently or regularly since EMT school started. For those who jumped in, EMT school for me ends at the end of next week. So I do have some more videos I want to put out, but we'll get there. Okay, so we talked about HR 4953, the National Firearms Amendment Act of 2021, which I think is going absolutely nowhere, which intends to take all semi-auto rifles and shotguns that take a detachable magazine and make you register them with a $200 tax stamp as an NFA item, national registration on those. It only has 8 co-sponsors. I don't think it's going anywhere at all. It's sitting at the bottom of the House, and honestly, with everything else going on, I think it's just going to fly away. But I don't think that's the end of it. We're going to see it someday in the future where chances for them are going to be better. So I don't think it's completely gone, but for now, I really don't worry about that as much. Okay, the next thing. We got to talk about something interesting, actually kind of on the same-ish topic of the bump stocks. Is the Rare Breed trigger. It's their forced reset trigger. So I don't know if you guys are aware, but Rare Breed has been making a drop-in trigger that is what they call their forced reset trigger. Now, actually, before the ATF came down on them recently, when they were still legal and good to go, I had a chance to mess around with one, install it in one of our rental guns, test it, check it out, see what it was about. And the whole idea is when you pull the trigger, it shoots one round, and then as the bolts, I'll just show you, but all right, we're clear. So you put it on semi, you pull the trigger, and as the trigger is pulled, when the bolt carrier comes back about this far, it forces your trigger finger forward on that trigger, and then it cycles, grabs the next round, and as long as you're applying rearward pressure, then click, it goes again. So again, you would put it on semi, and you pull the trigger, boom, it goes off, carrier comes back right about here, it forces your finger forward, and then it cycles, chambers the next round. And as long as you're applying that direct pressure, you come on in for another mechanical shot. Boom. Come on in for another mechanical shot. Boom. So in my testing with it, I realized that it definitely works. It works really well, much better than a bump stock or binary triggers. The interesting thing about it is ATF sent a cease and desist letter on July 26th of this year to the company, where incidentally they have just said, no, you guys provided no proof or no, any justification for why you don't like this. You just say, stop doing it, and we don't care. So the company right now is still manufacturing this trigger, and they are still selling this trigger, even though the ATF sent them a cease and desist, like, you need to stop manufacturing and selling this now, back on July 26th. Interesting thing is there is potential the ATF could take this further. The gentleman that owns the company is representing himself, which is never, never, never advisable, like literally ever, never. If there is any legal anything, never just represent yourself. That didn't work for Tim Bundy. That's not going to work for this. It never works. Don't. Get a lawyer. But anyway, we'll have to see where it goes. This is kind of the first one I can think of where the ATF told a company, hey, that thing we said was okay. Well, it's not okay anymore. You need to stop. And the company was like, nah, we're still going to keep doing it, whatever. So interesting thing for whoever has a Rare Breed force reset trigger. That's the kind of thing, like the bump stocks, that technical guidance would be for anyone who possesses one or bought one legally when it was legal to acquire one. ATF considers it just the drop-in trigger by itself. They consider it a machine gun, an unregistered illegal machine gun, just the trigger itself. And incidentally, by law, they would consider whatever lower you put it in is now a machine gun. But if you bought the trigger and didn't install it in anything, then just the trigger is the machine gun. So if you bought one of those, I would not take it to any public shooting ranges. I would not showcase it in public at a standard range. Hang out for that for a while. There's going to be some litigation. This is going to have to work through the courts. And again, kind of in that same vein of the bump stock, where personally I didn't have a use for it, because when I dropped that trigger in back again when it was legal, and when we had one, you basically had safe, and then you had really fast semi-auto, and that was it. There was no like a binary trigger where you have, safe, semi, and then binary. No, it's safe and it's really fast, full auto, or some fully semi-automatic. There we go. Am I using the proper incorrect term? And for me, again, how I talked about the importance and the value of actual semi-automatic function, and that's how you get things done. That's how you conserve ammunition. That's how you make effective hits. I would never want to give up true semi-automatic capability. Never. That is way too vital. It's way too important. So for me, kind of move that into the range toy category. Maybe not as bad as a bump stock, but I never want to give up semi-auto. That is the way. That's how we do like everything. But for those who may have bought one, that's the kind of thing that, you need to go boating real soon. And, hopefully your boat doesn't sink with all of your force reset triggers on it. At least until this gets solved, which may take a couple years. So just putting that, for your information, public service announcement for anyone who may have bought one of those. I think they were pretty expensive. They were like $450 or something. And incidentally, you needed a full auto M16 carrier, and you needed a heavier buffer generally to actually make it run. Because even though it was by the legal definition of a single function with a single shot, even though by the letter of the law, it was not full auto, it was not a machine gun, the ATF, they said, hey, well, I couldn't consciously realize when the reset was happening, so it just felt like a full auto, so it's a full auto, stop what you're doing. But even though it fits the letter of the law that it's not a machine gun, it fires pretty fast, and you're amping up the cyclic rate so fast that full auto stuff now needs to come into play. Full auto M16 carrier and the appropriate buffer weight for whatever barrel and build you have. So long story short, that's some news that we had to talk about the rare breed trigger for anyone who may have bought one, or still, they're still for sale. You can still buy them, but now the problem is the ATF put the cease and desist letter out on July 26th. So if you buy one now, they could, if they come after you, they could pin you with willingly and knowingly buying an illegal machine gun. So legally, that would put you in the same camp as a gangbanger that has a modified full auto Uzi in the trunk of his car, and you're going to buy that for like $500. So tread carefully. Okay. Let's see. The last thing is good news. Let me catch up with the comments. Would you actually own a light machine gun? Someday I think it'd be cool. If I could, I'd love to have a 240. I don't think there's any transferable 240s, so I'd have to be an SOT, where it would be on the license, not my private individual property. I have always wanted a 1918 BAR, always. The gun didn't really make a lot of sense towards the end of World War I for what it was designed for and the tactics that were supposed to be used with it. By the time World War II showed up, the BAR also still didn't really make a lot of sense, especially the US version of it with that crazy bipod. But it's what we had, so we just took it to war. Also in Korea, still, especially at that point, behind the power curve. But we still took it there anyway. And, honestly, the BAR has always, all of John Browning's designs are some of my most favorite firearms ever made. And it's awesome when I get to see an old Belgian produced A5 come in, or, a Remington Model 14, or literally anything the man designed and created. Really cool to see that there's similarities. When I was a 50 cal gunner, working with the headspace and timing on 50 cal machine gun, and how it actually works, where you can still see those John Browning principles even in the 22 semi-automatic rifles he was making, where you could adjust the headspace and get the slop out of the barrel and everything. It's like, wow, this guy, before computers and computer assisted drafting and CNC machines, and the dude did not think or work in decimals. He worked in fractions. Like, this guy was a true genius. So any of his guns I love, just from a design standpoint, and the fact that he was able to, the War Department would contact him in times of war, and they'd be like, hey, this is the kind of gun we need. What do you got? And he'd be like, all right, yeah, too easy. I'll get you a working copy. I'll send it to Washington, and it'll be there within 30 days, or else you guys can just have it for free. That is insane. Even by today's standards, if you approached Glock or you approached any gun company, let's use Glock as an example. Hey, we need you to make a carbine, and you got 30 days to do it. And they have engineers and, really smart, cool guys, 30 days to crank out a working, functional weapon you could actually take to war and issue in mass numbers after serial production. Impressive. The dude was just a genius. There's no way around it. So BAR would be awesome, especially when I was a 240 gunner. The BAR is essentially an upside down magazine fed 240. Historically speaking, the 240 is actually an upside down belt fed BAR. So it's really cool how that all works. So anyway, yes, I would like to own one someday. Financially, it's going to cost a lot of money. We all know that if you're going to buy a transferable full auto. It would probably be a BAR, maybe a Belgian one. I think that's probably the best version of the BAR that anyone made, even though it doesn't really make sense. It never made sense during its time of service as much, especially by World War II. But, dude, it's just awesome. Got to have it if I could. Anyway, getting to Pew Pew Archives, welcome. Sorry I'm a little late here. I would really like your opinion on how possible it's going to be for the last planes to leave Kabul. You can answer this question at the end of the stream. Important topic, I think. Yes, it is an important topic. Let me get through these last two comments in the chat. I have one more thing, and this is the good news that's happening in the gun world, and then we're going to talk about Afghanistan. Okay, Patriot, Mr. 2A, because of the interest in things like bump stocks and those triggers, really leads me to believe that there is a want to get rid of those old, ridiculous laws. Yes, that would be nice. Real quick, let's see. Miss Texas is here. Okay, what's up? Oh, okay. No worries. Okay, enjoy.
Okay.
All right. I'll be there at some point.
Okay, goodbye.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think there's a move to get rid of things that are old and antiquated. 1934 NFA, chiefly the biggest example. And for those who are first time watching, or eventually you guys are going to see this and watch it, for those who don't know, I am unapologetically repeal the NFA, repeal the Hughes Amendment, repeal the gun control, all that stuff. Just trash it. It was literally the government creating its own problem of the gangsters using Tommy guns and everything during Prohibition. So they created Prohibition, which created an instant black market of mobs and different turf wars of these powerful criminal enterprises doing illicit alcohol. So to protect their interests and fight and gain turf and influence among each other, they're getting heavy duty hardware, which they stole from the government. A lot of those Thompson submachine guns were stolen from the Navy. So government losing accountability of their weapons, which we're going to talk, because that literally just happened in Afghanistan. So what else is changing? What else is new? Government creating a problem, criminal enterprise capitalizes on it. Violence is starting to get crazy because of the weapons they stole from the government, and some they also bought. So now government puts down this law to basically ban anything that the mobsters were using, and purposely put it at $200 tax stamp for NFA items, because that was at the time the cost of what it took to buy a Thompson submachine gun, which back in 1934, $200 was not cheap. I mean, it's still not cheap today, but it is so much easier than back then. And of course, they carved out for law enforcement. You ever notice how a short-barreled shotgun, to register one of those, it's a $5 tax stamp? That's so the cops, law enforcement across the country could still do it for cheap. But everything else, $200. And initially, handguns were going to be included, and that was dropped at the last minute. Handguns as an NFA item, which could be in our future as a proposed bill someday. Probably, coming soon at some point. But yeah, that trash needs to go. Okay, last thing, and then we'll get to the last good news here. You still think that the SA-80 is the worst assault rifle in NATO? Germany tried to work on it, I hear. Yes. So I personally think out of all NATO forces, the worst service rifle still in use right now would have to be the SA-80, and they're actually on their Alpha 3 right now. So the third, actually fourth version. And yes, they had H&K try to fix them up. I think that's when they did the Alpha 1. Then they moved to the Alpha 2. Maybe they're on the Alpha 2 right now. So maybe it has been 3 iterations of the gun trying to continually fix what's already broken. And the crazy thing, too, is the British military has a contract with Lewis Machine and Tool, LMT, and they've had it for 5 or 6 years now. For their designated marksman rifle. And it's basically the LMT AR-10, the MWS 308. That's what the British Army uses as their designated marksman rifle. So I'm like, okay, you guys have like halfway discovered the AR system and the beauty of Eugene Stoner and the quality that Lewis Machine and Tool makes. And you guys are very happy with that weapon system. So you guys know it exists, and you're very happy with Eugene Stoner's system. But you're not going to do that for everyone. You're just doing that for the designated marksman and their SAS and their version of special forces. They have AR-15s. So it's like, okay, so special purpose infantrymen and your special forces have ARs, but you're still banging everyone around, just kicking this SA-80 around. In Iraq, we got to hold them and shoot them. We had like a joint range day with them. I was like, dude, you cannot be serious. Like, this is what you guys have? The amount of jams that have been happening and this weird, like, charging handle thing we got to do. Like, plus it's bullpup, which I'm not a huge bullpup guy, like, at all. But that's more personal preference, just speaking to the mechanical qualities of the gun. I was like, dude, this is terrible. And they, joked like, oh, do you want to trade an M4? I'm like, I felt like giving the Clint Smith answer. It's like, an SA-80, like, I wouldn't have one up my butt if I had enough room for a tugboat. Like, I have no purpose for an SA-80 at all. Clint Smith says that a lot better than I just did, but the sentiment, trust me, is the same. So yes, I think it is awful. I think one of the best, if we're going to go the other direction, one of the best service rifles that NATO has, probably New Zealand. New Zealand's M4, also an LMT. And I'm not sponsored by LMT. I'm not sponsored by anyone. I'm not even sponsored by PBR or Copenhagen. But yeah, New Zealand probably has one of the best service rifles on the planet right now, says me. So there's your worst and best. Okay. Let's see. Last thing, are you still optimistic about things generally? Like last time I asked, yes. And he's talking about being optimistic still about the Second Amendment. Yes, I am, which leads us, perfect segue, into our last thing, which is good news. So for those who don't know, the New York State New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Corlett. This is a case that has been moving up, and the Supreme Court a while back decided they are going to take this case. And we just got news that the Supreme Court has announced that they're going to start opening oral arguments on November 3rd of this year. So a couple months. This is important for a number of reasons. So first of all, believe it or not, we don't have a lot of Second Amendment case law when it comes to the Supreme Court. Miller versus United States, Heller versus DC, McDonald versus Chicago, and that's pretty much that. We have a ton of cases on Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, moving into Miranda rights as well. Just a metric fuck ton of case law on the First Amendment. But when it comes to the Second Amendment and the Third Amendment too, but Second Amendment, there's not really a lot. The last thing that happened was McDonald versus Chicago, which was kind of a secondary effect of Heller versus DC in 2008. So prior to that, I mean, the Second Amendment had not really been messed with by SCOTUS or the Supreme Court of the United States. So this is going to be a Second Amendment case to add into that really small cadre of Second Amendment cases that have actually happened at the Supreme Court in our country's history. So that's important thing number one. Important thing number two is the crux of the issue. The real case here is New York is just like California, Hawaii, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, those states. I'm probably missing one or two. But they're what's considered a may issue state. So most of the states in the union are shall issue states. So, hey, as long as you pass the basic mandated curriculum, you pass the background check, you pay the fee, you shall be given a permit. There's nothing we, the state, can do to stop that. If you hold up everything on your end, we can't prevent you from getting one. You pay the fee, you do the training, you pass the background check, we shall issue you a permit, and that's that. States like New York, New Jersey, California are a may issue state. So what that means is they may issue a permit, but oftentimes they may not. And may issue states require you to provide justification as to why you feel it's pertinent or necessary for you specifically to be able to apply and get a concealed carry permit. So New Yorkers, Californians, people living in may issue states, you know, if they say, oh, well, I have the Second Amendment, I have an inherent right to self-defense, I just want to be able to defend my own life and the life of my family, self-defense, they will turn those permits away. And they'll be like, nope, not a good enough reason. States like New York, California, I can only speak on California from living there and living like half my life there. Used to be in the gun industry there. If you're in California, you're not getting a concealed carry permit unless you know somebody. Your brother is a chief of police, or you donated to the right, political campaign. You're buddy with someone. You're a celebrity or someone famous. Outside of that, you are not getting a concealed carry permit. Now in California, they do it weird where your county sheriff issues the permit, and the permit is valid for the whole state. So if you live in like Los Angeles County, no, you're not getting it unless you're well-connected, important, wealthy, donated money. But maybe if you're in Ventura or Kern County, more agrarian, kind of rural farming kind of counties where the sheriffs are more conservative leaning, it's easier to get a permit, but you have to be a resident within that county, have a physical address, actually live in that county. In the case of New York, they just issue it by state, as far as I understand, and people just saying, hey, I just have a Second Amendment. I want to have the right to defend myself. State of New York is like, nope, not good enough. So you basically need like a psychopath that tried to kill you, and they got off on a technicality and no one knows where they are, but they're somewhere out there in the world, like presenting all this documentation, or like, look, this person attacked me, I was in the hospital, whatever, this guy is still out there free today, I'm worried he's going to come back and hit me again. Like, unless you have something crazy, or again, you've got money, you're well connected, something like that, you're not going to get a permit. So the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association is challenging this to say, hey, we believe that the Second Amendment is everyone's right for self-defense with a firearm. And the state of New York deciding not to give us permits for that is a violation of the Constitution. So the second big thing about this case, besides the fact that it's actually a Second Amendment case and it's getting heard soon, it's actually good, there's going to be a decision, is this is really, we might, if this goes in a pro Second Amendment way, we might see the complete end of may issue states. I don't think it's going to do away with concealed carry permits. And I still think if a state wants to be constitutional carry, that's going to be up to that state. So I don't see like constitutional carry across the whole United States, but I do see this is more of an issue of, can a state even exist as a may issue state anymore? Because if the Supreme Court finds that the Second Amendment does include the inherent right to self-defense, even outside your home, because they've already said, hey, inside the home, you have a right to own a firearm and protect yourself. Outside the home, no. At least the Ninth Circuit Court has ruled that way. And the circuit appellate courts have had disagreements. That's why it's at the Supreme Court. But if this goes in a pro-Second Amendment direction, we could see the end of may issue states. And states may just have to, they're going to be ordered to, there's going to be no way for them anymore to deny people concealed carry permits when they state they just want to access their Second Amendment self-defense rights. So this one I'm feeling pretty good about based on the composition of the Supreme Court. Now that we have Justice Gorsuch, Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Coney Barrett. And one thing that's interesting, Justice Thomas, who has been on the court for quite some time, in recent years, and even recently, early this year, Justice Thomas spoke out, which is not very common, especially for him. And he said, I'm really disappointed that we've had some pretty juicy Second Amendment cases that have come across the Supreme Court that really should have been heard, and we decided not to hear that case. And I'm really disappointed as a Supreme Court that we have not heard any Second Amendment cases after Heller versus DC, McDonald versus Chicago in 2010. Basically, there's been nothing at the Supreme Court, and all the federal courts, circuit courts, they've all been disagreeing and kind of doing their own thing. And this is what we exist for, is to clarify, set the record straight. And this is what we're doing now as a country. This is the highest court in the land. This is our job, and we're not doing it. So it'll be pretty interesting. We'll have to see how those oral arguments go, how New York State Rifle and Pistol Association argues their case, how the state of New York argues their case. But based on what's at stake, what we saw, and especially McDonald versus Chicago when it comes to states' rights, but also Heller versus DC for individual rights, and the composition of the Supreme Court. I mean, I don't want to count all the eggs before they hatch, but this actually is probably going to end up being a really, really fantastic pro-Second Amendment decision. So be on the radar for that. So oral arguments start November 3rd. And I mean, Heller versus DC took like 3.5 months, I think. So, that kind of gives you a rough idea of how long it would take until we actually have a decision. And there's a bunch of, supporters and protesters outside the Supreme Court and reporters telling you what the decision was when it comes down. But, within probably 5 to 6 months from now, this case probably is going to have a decision. And I anticipate let me put it this way. If you're anti-gun, get ready to be probably wildly disappointed. So there we go. We had the bad, we had the medium news, and we ended with good news. That was a good suggestion to go in that order. I did have some questions prepared. You guys were emailing me some questions. I got all the emails that you guys sent, got some interesting questions from comments on some of my videos that I felt needed to be highlighted. But if you guys emailed me at mr2actual@gmail.com, listed in the description here, I have your email and your question. Based on time, and we still got to talk about Afghanistan, I think we may have to do that as a separate video. So for those who ask questions, if you guys are cool with that, Patriot, I know you're one of the guys who ask questions. If you're cool with that, it just in the constraints of time, we're almost going on 2 hours here. And the topic we're about to discuss, probably have to do that in a separate video. But you guys sent me some really good questions. Again, you guys can send me questions, Mr2Actual@gmail.com. They can be gun related. They can be life questions. If it's something sensitive or whatever, I'll keep your name out of it. We don't have to mention names, but any questions you have, I just want to engage with you guys, even if I'm not able to do videos like every day or often. So thank you guys for that. Let's see. All right, catching up. Let's see, be careful. Them redcoats might try to steal it. Yeah, I mean, they really wanted to at least sign over, like legally sign a couple M4s just so they could have them for their gunners. And I was like, no. We were like, no, we're going to keep our, God and Eugene Stoner got together and made this thing. We are very happy with it. We're going to keep it. And you get to go play with your whatever that is and, have a blessed day. Let's see. Future of the country. I still think for the future of the country, there's a lot of good there. There is a lot of moving pieces that, there's a lot of potential. I'll just say it that way. See, out of curiosity, having interacted with British soldiers, do they playfully mess around with you about the Revolutionary War? No, it's there might be a joke here or there, but honestly, the British soldiers, Australian guys, New Zealand dudes, we even had Czech soldiers, Italian, German, like any NATO troops that I had the fortune of working with. They may have had a more limited role by the time I got to Afghanistan and then later Iraq, but the jobs, and the Finnish guys too, awesome soldiers. The British were awesome to work with. I mean, all of them were. I don't have any bad things to say about, honestly, any NATO troops, whether we worked with them a lot or every now and then. Overall, it was mutual respect. And, if they were in trouble or if we were in trouble, the urgency was mutual to help each other. And that includes even the French. Yes. French air power over our heads for a lot of our missions, fixed wing CAS air support, hanging out, doing some low flybys with afterburners, just sending a message of like, hey, don't fuck around because we're up here. Like Iraq really felt like a super team effort because I'd seen a number of coalition partner troops in Afghanistan, but Iraq was like, it was like Times Square, like Al Assad, and then some other places where for the short time we were at Al Assad, just kind of moving in and moving out from the country. But you had a lot of people from a lot of places, and I really don't have any shit to talk. It was a mutual professionalism, and it was cool. It was like, man, if we're having a bad day out here, which we had a couple really bad days out there, it's like if we got French air power above us, okay, they're off station, they're bingo on fuel, US F-15s are taking over or whatever. Like it was just it was a pretty cool party. It was, and you knew like, okay, those are professional soldiers or professional aviators, and that's a professional Air Force above our heads. May not have American flags or American rundles on the plane, but like, they know what to do and they care about you, So it was pretty cool. Always going to remember that aspect of the job. Let's see. Okay. What can I say about Afghanistan? It's bombed out and depleted. Some of you may know that reference. Maybe I just dated myself. For this one, we got a pack of dip. Nasty habit, don't do it. But here we go. You guys, I'm going to open the floor for those of you who are still here. I apologize, super late. But you guys can ask any questions you want about Afghanistan. Now, My history with it is my family is from New York. I was born in New York. Um, I remember going to Ground Zero in New York City early 2002 when we could fly and actually go there. I remember seeing Ground Zero, still have photos that I took as a kid. I was 13 at the time, 14. And, it really impacted me a lot. My uncles, to this day, they're still in construction, in the construction business, various different jobs, but they took some time out to help and work with the recovery efforts. The whole city kind of came together, and man, I will never forget how it felt as a kid to go to New York City, see this smoking hole of shit in the middle of Manhattan, and everyone just looks like they've been up for 40 hours working. And later we would know that a lot of the 9/11 first responders would breathe all that in and die from cancer. A lot of those dudes have passed on unnatural early deaths from breathing in all that shit. But I just remember what I felt looking at it, and I remember it's hard to describe, but like the feeling of the city, it was weird because like if you talk to like a World War II veteran or a veteran in general or something like, they have a story, but not a lot of people share that. People will listen or whatever, but that's their story. When I was there early 2002 in New York, the whole city had a story. Everybody had a story, from firefighters, cops, first responders, construction guys, anyone helping, even the Starbucks barista that was near Ground Zero when it went down. Like every taxi cab driver, like everyone had a story, and everyone was affected by it immensely. And the vibe of the city, I'll never forget the feeling. So as a kid, I was like, whoever fucking did this, this is what I'm doing with my life now. I'm going to spend some time in the military to unfuck this, or at least do something, because this shit is not okay. That's the end of that. So, later enlisted in the Army after college, 11 Bravo. Went to a dismounted reconnaissance troop, reconnaissance outfit, 389 Cav, 310, or 3rd Brigade, 10th Mountain Division, out of Fort Polk. When I got there, it was 4th Brigade, but then Fort Drum, they shut down 3rd Brigade and reflagged us as 3rd. And then within 6 months of getting there, we went to Afghanistan. And I knew that pretty soon after I got to Fort Polk. So I was like soaking up as much information as I can, or as I could, because I was like the new guy on the block, and all we had was infantry OSET. Thankfully, the Army has actually expanded that to longer training, more intense training. At the time, it was only like 16 weeks. And then we went to Afghanistan, and we were in Nangarhar province at Jalalabad Airfield, fought Venti. And I'm proud to see, like, if you guys have seen the protests where local Afghanis are in Jalalabad and some other places where they're still holding the national flag up, despite the Taliban telling them not to. And there's been some shooting. Taliban have shot at some of the protesters. It's weird, man. Eastern Afghanistan, different. You could tell the people there were very different, a different mindset. They didn't give a good goddamn about, like, they were very independent. This is my river valley. This is our tribe. We just do things the way we do it, and we don't give a shit. That was kind of the thing. So I'm not surprised to see, at least in Jalalabad proper, local nationals, Afghans, still defiantly waving their flag and saying, we don't give a shit, and getting shot for it, but overall, it's, the facts. We went there right after the December 11th attacks. Actually, right around when I was in New York City as a kid, formulating that opinion and really soaking it in, is kind of when we opened up the opening salvo of Afghanistan. Initially, it was CIA dropping in with special forces to kind of get a foothold, work with the Northern Alliance, start tracking down Al Qaeda, and start hunting bin Laden. And, the fuckers who did that, that was the mission. We're going to go there and we're going to smash them in the face. We're going to just eviscerate these people. Taliban very quickly, as we started to boost up more, started bringing more special forces, started bringing in SEALs, started bringing in CAG, started bringing in conventional units in smaller numbers back then. Started totally smashing ass. Taliban was on the retreat. Northern Alliance was fighting as well. I mean, this shit was going crazy. Ranger Battalion guys were dropping in airfields down south. It was just a fuck your face kind of operation. Very quickly, Taliban was like, holy shit, the U.S. military is showing up with all this ass. Everything is coordinated, and they're taking everything like all the time. And that was good. Operation Anaconda happened in 2002. That was the first big time where we're like, holy shit, we can still get our asses kicked. This terrain is not good. This country is different. We need to slow down, really think about what's going on. All said, I mean, without cataloging the whole history of it, it turned into a nation building kind of exercise where it wasn't simply about hunting Al Qaeda and trying to hunt down bin Laden. It was more about, okay, well, now that we're here and we're still hunting bin Laden, and we realize the second we leave, the Taliban is going to come back, Al Qaeda is going to prosper again. So we gotta stay. And then it moved into this nation building thing. And in fact, the Afghan constitution that was in effect as of 3-4 days ago, that was actually written in Bonn, Germany. Like that wasn't even written in Afghanistan. They wrote that and penned it. And here's the tough thing, guys. Like, it's really hard to describe the culture clash. And for those of you who have like traveled to Europe or traveled to South America, traveled to just any part of the world, third world, first world, whatever, like for those of you guys who have traveled around the world, I'm sure you've met culture clash in some way. And, maybe it's not like United Kingdom where, like you have to pay for a glass of water at a restaurant, or, in France, you can order beer through the drive-thru or whatever it is. Like, we're talking about some hardcore deviation. The divide is rather what I want to say. I mean, it felt like medieval times, but with like Roshan cell phones, like the most popular local Afghan cell phones in the area. And it was, women couldn't drive a car. They could in Kabul. Kabul was kind of a microcosm, more Western influence, more, I guess, as close as you could kind of get. But outside of Kabul, the rest of the country was still old school Afghan. Pashtun people, it's not just, they make up a lot of the Eastern. They're one of the larger ethnic tribal groups in Afghanistan, but there's over a dozen different major ethnic groups and tribes in Afghanistan. Not to mention, we're talking about a country that the lines of the borders of Afghanistan as we know it on the map today, they're not any natural borders. Like, these were purposely drawn by the British and some other influences and in fact, like the eastern border of Afghanistan was put on the mountaintops of the mountains between what we now know as modern day Pakistan, with the express purpose of cutting the Pashtun people in half, conquer and divide. Back in the 19th century with the British down there when they were in Afghanistan for the first and second time. So we're talking about borders that were drawn in the late 1800s, I think 1893. We're talking about borders that were purposely drawn to divide these different tribes and try to pit them against each other and do this, whatever purposes the British Empire had for those borders at the time, they still remain to this day. So another thing that's tough is like here in the United States, if you guys are watching outside the United States, I think you guys may understand if you visited us. But in the United States, I mean, you're going to see like American flags. Like I've got one hanging on my house, got another one in my garage, got another one hanging in the hallway. Each one is important to me for a different reason. You look outside, look at your city, look at your town. You're going to see American flags everywhere. We identify as Americans. We're very proud of our country. We're proud to be American. We feel, there is a stable, at least, it's there as, we have our country, we have our states. This is America. And we have a very connected kind of national identity, or at least as Americans, we have quite a lot to share just in that statement as being fellow countrymen, as being Americans. We have a sense of a nation. We have a sense of at least a unified togetherness. And despite how polarized or crazy things have gotten with politics and everything else, we still, you're going to find your most conservative, right-leaning dude, and he's going to be an American. You're going to find your most left-leaning Democrat. They're going to, also be an American and be proud of it too. They might have a flag outside their house. So we have a national connection. Like plot twist, Afghanistan does not have that at all. The Pashtun people, a lot of mountainous people, they got pushed up into the Hindu Kush and the mountain ranges to occupy these desolate, really rough terrain mountain valleys. They got pushed up there hundreds of years ago by the Huns. The Huns came in. They were not interested in controlling the country as much as ransacking it. So they got pushed up there and they just lived there and they've never come down. We've had some tribes or villages, like we show up and they're thinking that we're the Russians because they don't even know, or they don't care to know. They're so isolated from the news and they don't need to know the news. They don't care. Like, hey, this is my mountain valley. This is my tribe. This is my village. We raise goats. We do, farming. We get water. We work as a community. We govern ourselves, very tribal. And we don't need to do much else, and we don't care about much else. Unless they're trading or fighting with, the other tribal elder or tribe or village on the next mountain valley over. Not a lot of interaction. So this idea of like American democracy, like, hey, we showed up, we're mad about 9/11, we're smashing Al-Qaeda, we're hunting bin Laden, we kicked out the Taliban, now we're going to help you make a democratic republic. It's like, dude, they don't want that. They don't care about it. It's like, no, we're doing just fine in our mountain valleys. We don't care. Really, you have in the river valleys, the bigger cities, Kandahar, Herat, Jalalabad, Kabul, like those are your major city centers. But the entire rest of the country, they don't care. They don't need it. They don't want it. And especially if you're going to introduce like Western or American ideas of like, if a woman can't drive a car, by and large, they have to get married off to whoever their father or the tribal elder say they need to marry. Very medieval of like, hey, we're going to marry her off to this family so that way we have shared blood and we're going to stop fighting now. It's like women, can't, there's a lot of things they can't do. And they're basically, especially if you're going with like hardline Taliban, their version of Islamic law and how they were in the 90s and how they're going to be moving forward, they belong in the house. They just, make kids and take care of the house, and that is their job. So you're going to take Western ideas of like, hey, women can vote, women can drive cars. We're going to help you appoint women in parliament and female justices or judges. Like, it's like way too much, way too fast, way too soon. Like, it's almost like if you had a a foreign power coming to the United States was like, hey, yeah, that whole constitutional republic democracy thing, yeah, we're going to help you build a communist government. And here's the communist ideas that are now going to be the thing. As Americans, we'd be like, we don't want it. We don't care for it. We're not about it. We're not doing it. That's probably the best example I can try to think of. The terrain, very challenging. It's fucking challenging. It'd be insane. Like having a CH-47, like a Chinook, take you to the side of a mountain, like dump you out the back, and you're just fucking around in these jagged rock cliffs and mountains. So I've seen, the Grand Tetons. I live in Utah. I've seen a lot of mountains. I've seen the Adirondacks, Appalachia Valley, Appalachia, mountains. I've seen a lot of mountains. I've never seen mountains like that, especially Paktika province. That was a fucking nightmare. And you just be, if you're walking for like a day and a half, fucking around up in the mountains at high elevation, just sucking, absolutely just sucking. And then you're just going to find like a goat herder wearing sandals. He's got like all 30 of his goats somehow on top of this mountain. Somehow he got up there. And by the way, there's like a 6-year-old kid who's barefoot, who's doing fine. And like you hand him a bottle of water or something, and they would just pour the water out just to look at the bottle. It's like, dude, what the fuck? Like this place is so different. And the terrain, incredibly challenging. Like the U.S. military, our military operates on a heavily reliant, it's a very expansive, very huge, and it's a very expensive logistics train. That's how we operate. And naturally, when we helped build the Afghan government, starting with Karzai as the president, which he had a bunch of enemies in Afghanistan, we basically chose him, and this is what we're doing now, like it or not. So we set up their government sort of in our image, but we set up their military, or tried to, in the image of our military, which for us, it works. And even for them, at times it was really shoddy. It was shit. But the ANA could actually get stuff done, but it was heavily reliant on U.S. weapons, U.S. training, U.S. air support, logistic support. And, the second you remove us and our fancy, expensive logistics train and support from the equation and our air power and everything, then the Afghan army is just a bunch of dudes with weapons just hanging out. And now it moves to the leadership, which you have to ask yourself, how long does it really take to build a military? In the U.S. military, we've been going since the late 18th century. We have generals. Think of, General Mattis level commanders. Vicious, smart, tactical, lethal, effective generals, highly respected by their troops. We have colonels, senior officers. We send these people to go get their master's degree. We send them to the Army War College. We send them to so much training and actual experience and leadership. Senior NCOs, my favorite NCO corps, that we have in the U.S. military. We have some senior ass NCOs who know what they're doing, have a lot of experience, going to various versions of the NCO Academy, getting experience through deployments or doing the job, leadership, working with their airmen or sailors or soldiers, Marines. We have a fine-tuned cadre of senior, experienced, effective, quality leadership between our generals, officers, non-commissioned officers. And that takes a long time to build a competent, effective, quality leadership element on all of those major ranks, versus standing up the Afghan army and the Afghan police. And, we don't have experienced, we don't have a bunch of Afghan officers that have been in the Afghan army for like 45 years and now they're finally fine-tuned and trained and experienced to become a general. Like, no, we're starting this up, so this guy has a lot of influence and power. He must be good if we put him as a colonel. Okay, here we go. Keep in mind, the Taliban had a lot of, decent fighters. So did Al-Qaeda, Haqqani, as much as I hate to say that shit. So, a lot of the foreign trained or imported talent or guys who are actually effective in that terrain, they were on the enemy's team. So really, when we were getting started, you're working with who's left. You're working with what you have to work with. You might have an Afghan dude that just got appointed as a major in the Afghan army. He has no business actually being a major. He's got no combat experience leading men as an officer. Maybe he personally, ethically, morally is corrupt and does horrible things. So you don't want to work with this guy, but he's all you got. Another problem we had is, 4 presidents, lots of secretary of defenses, lots of rotating generals in charge of Afghanistan, that theater. And, we never, between the surges and we're going to back off. Oh shit, we're going to surge again. Okay, we're not doing this anymore. Now we're doing this. Oh, wait a minute. Let's go back to doing that. It was like, it almost seems in that 20-year timeline that, we never had a consistent, unified, like, here it is written on a piece of paper. This is what we want. This is what we're going to do. Let's keep moving. And it's not like we were doing the same thing for 20 years. It was like a light switch. It just kind of kept flickering on and off. There was no consistent continuity or momentum in the same direction. So by the time I got to Afghanistan in 2015, and that was part of Operation Resolute Support, the ISIS franchise had moved in the neighborhood, ISIS KP in Nangarhar province. So it was the Afghan franchise of ISIS fighting against the Taliban, and both hated us and were fighting us. And it was a mess. It was a mess. And it was just really understanding or trying to understand what I was seeing and just working with our Afghan platoon. We didn't train them. We didn't accompany. I mean, it was not a productive partnership, to say the least. And working with those guys, I was like, dude, we are the U.S. Army. We hold ourselves to certain universal standards, certain standards of conduct, certain standards of individual soldier tasks, making sure that your weapon is clean, that your nods have batteries, that you're squared away, and then working together and being on the same page. And there are actual standards and there's actual effective ways to enforce them and police that up and make this happen. Dude, they didn't have any of that. Just the culture of their military, it was a shit show. Drug use was extremely prevalent. It's funny, they never want. I would offer American chewing tobacco or dip. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. They had their own. They called it Naswari. It was like a clay ball of tobacco / opium. And they would always offer that and be like, no, dude, who knows what's in there? I can't. No. But they were always, like, if we were to institute drug testing, which we do in the U.S. military all the time, frequently, if we were to do that to the Afghan army, we'd lose 9 out of 10 soldiers probably right off the bat. There's no way around it. And again, you're dealing with who you have, not who you want to work with. This is what we got, and we got to work with these guys and get them the best that we can within our constraints of trying to get these guys combat effective and try to do the job without us. But this is who we got. And especially they are heavily reliant on our air support and our presence and our logistics train, like anyone and everyone, I would say NCO all the way down to your E1 private, everyone who ever worked with the ANA could tell you right off the bat, without doubt, the second we leave, this is going to shit. And going back in time, right after 9/11, when we were inserting small groups of, special forces, CIA, Rangers, SEALs, like smashing and fucking hitting hard and hunting bin Laden, that was one thing. But when it somehow, some way turned into nation building and trying to build a government and a military in our own image, heavily relying on us, whether we intended, I don't think we did intend that. It's just, if we're going to build something, we're going to build it in our own image. But don't be surprised when it shits the bed the second you leave, And when it turned into that, it was just, in retrospect now, I mean, it was doomed to fail. And in our country, you get what you pay for, right? Like, okay, I spent, $800 on this pistol, and it's supposed to be the top of the line, the best. So I don't want any parts breaking. I just want it to shoot, have a nice trigger, be reliable. You get what you pay for. So I almost think in a way it's like, well, we spent billions of dollars, gave them all these weapons, all of this training, even got them an Air Force that's flying. We paid so much in blood and casualties and treasure and weapons and money. We have to get what we pay for, right? Like there's no way this can fail so fast if we've paid so many lives and so much money. And it's like, yes, yeah, it can fall on its ass real fast. You could ask literally anyone who spent any time working with the Afghan army. Now, don't get me wrong. There were some guys in the Afghan army that we worked with, and especially the commandos, because Afghan commandos lived with and trained with our Army Special Forces. So Afghan commandos were just about as legit as it's ever going to get. But we did work with some individuals in the Afghan army that were squared away. They were dedicated to this idea of a nation of Afghanistan. They did not want to see the Taliban come back. They did not want to have shitheads like Al-Qaeda, snooping around and hanging out in their country. They were in it to win it, and they were actually worth a damn. The problem is they were the exception, not the rule. By and large, again, you were working with who you were working with. This is who you have. This is kind of what you got. So moving towards how we left, or really how we are leaving Afghanistan, because the part I didn't mention is we had some really awesome dudes that were interpreters, that were enablers, people that worked with us, worked for us, side by side with us. Interpreters, for a long time, until the policy changed, we'd give them weapons too. Like, these guys are squared away, they're trustworthy, they're vetted. They've been working with U.S. forces for 5 years. Solid guys who made things happen. Incidentally, pointing out, hey, this guy right here, we know he's Taliban. Everyone's telling me this guy's Taliban. We also know in this village that guy's Taliban. Okay, so now you have interpreters who put a lot on the line, risking themselves, risking their families, and the safety of them and their families to work with us as interpreters or enablers in one way or another, that have letters of commendations and letters of thanks from colonels and different commands that they worked for. These are guys that have binders full of letters signed by American officers thanking them for their duties as an interpreter, and really saving the day on some missions, and not just risking themselves and their family, but going on missions with our forces, with us, and also taking on that risk. In fact, probably more risk, because the Taliban views them as literally the worst thing, second only to the United States. that it's like, oh, you're a Pashtun Afghan, like you're one of us, and you choose to work with the infidels. Oh, you're even like you're on the shit list, dude. You're even worse than the infidels. So yeah, I mean, not only physically risking themselves going on missions with us, but risking their security. By the time I was there, from 15 to 16, our interpreters, they could not even leave the fob, and they had to move their families to Kabul because I mean, if they went outside the wire, outside the fob, and they wanted to go into the city of Jalalabad, they wanted to go outside even a kilometer or two outside the base, like they were risking getting their head cut off. They were risking getting kidnapped and God knows what. I mean, the incredible work and personal sacrifice and personal risk that they took on for themselves and their family just to work with us and legitimately help us. And leaving those dudes behind. Disgraceful. Disgusting. And it begs the question of, countries that are allied with us right now, or countries like Taiwan, or movements like the Hong Kong protesters and everything. Anyone who is allied with us and like, hey, if anything happens, we're allied with the United States, they're going to come save us, right? Or countries like Taiwan, same thing, but like, hey, if things start getting a little spicy with China in the next 10 years, we can count on the Americans, right? Like they're going to come help us, right? And after this, it's like, what are they to think? Like, oh shit, well, they just used and abused all these Afghans. They went in there and tried to create a government. It fell on its ass the second they left. The people, and even the people from Afghanistan that helped them, are being treated like shit and left behind. So what does that mean? Like, if I'm allied with the United States, am I just a shiny toy that while the United States is still interested in being my friend, everything's fine? But the second things get a little too hot, America's going to bounce and they're going to leave me to the wolves and I'm on my own. Should I even be in an alliance with the United States if this is potentially what might happen to me? That's the message that we just sent over the past week. And the way I look at it, like I said earlier, anyone who's worked with the Afghan army spent some serious time there. And I'm not just talking about politicians trying to do a photo op for 2 days, spending Thanksgiving with the troops in Afghanistan. I'm talking about you've spent a year, almost a year of your life living in that place, working with their soldiers, interfacing with civilians on the ground, and really sizing up what is going on out here. You knew the second we left, we all knew it was someday, whenever that day comes, it's going to go to shit. And there's a high chance, pretty much guaranteed chance, the Taliban are going to take this shit over again. Not to mention pulling out during the fighting season. For those who don't know, Afghanistan has a fighting season. It's almost like football or hockey or some other sport. In the wintertime, things kind of slow down. Taliban usually will go back to Pakistan, resupply, rearm, regroup, get more recruits, go back into Afghanistan for the fighting season when the summer starts. And that's when it gets hot and heavy. And then the next winter comes, everything kind of slows down. They consolidate their forces, reserve their combat power, regroup, rearm, and then rinse, wash, repeat. The whole cycle just keeps going for 20 years. So they had nothing but time. And anyone who worked with Afghan soldiers, spent time on the ground for a long period of time, that any one of us could have told you and did tell you, hey man, this is going to happen. And the way I look at it is like, because I've had some friends asking like, well, is there any way we could have got out of Afghanistan and avoid this kind of fate? I'm like, yeah. The way I look at it, it's like a dam that's going to burst. And downstream of the dam is like a small town. And there's all these people in this town. And it's like the dam is starting to develop some cracks. It's starting to leak some water. The foundation is starting to look a little sketchy. And you have some engineers look at the dam and they're like, yeah, dude, this dam's about to break. It's going to break. And it's going to break soon. Upon hearing that news, that is when you need to start getting your people out. That is when you need to start putting out an evacuation order for this town and say, hey, this dam's going to burst. You're going to lose your homes. That's going to suck, but we don't want to lose you. So we need every single person. We need to get all of our people out before this thing breaks. And that would have been ideal. Months ago, we should have been putting a rush on processing special immigrant visas for interpreters or any Afghans who worked with us. Months ago, we should have been directly contacting all Americans still in the country, contractors, journalists, whoever they are, non-U.S. military Americans in Afghanistan. And we should have been like, hey, get to Kabul. Let's get you out of here. Get to Kandahar airfield. Get to Jalalabad airfield. Get somewhere so we can get you out. Months and months and months ago, we should have been doing this. And I don't know why the Biden administration, it just looks like in the speeches he gave leading up to this, even in July and even recently, President Biden was questioned like, oh, do you foresee like the Taliban taking over? And he was like, nope. The Afghan army, they have all the weapons, they have all the tools, they have all the funding. You get what you pay for. We have to, right? They have everything they need. They're going to totally repel the Taliban. I have no concerns about the Taliban taking over. It's not going to happen. And that was like a month ago. And it's like, what? Like in his cabinet, with his advisors and intelligence community and the generals he has working for him now at the Pentagon, like, was there not at least one voice in the room that was like, hey, sir, I know everyone in this room is a yes man and they're agreeing with you that it's going to be great and the Afghans are going to be perfect and the Taliban has no chance of coming back and all of this Disneyland, candy coated stuff. But I got to tell you, sir, this shit's going to fall on its ass fast. And we need to start getting people out. Like, was there not one person? Like, was this an incredible intelligence failure? Was he just surrounded by yes men that just kept boosting him up? And they're like, hey, it's going to be fine, sir. Like, it's going to be fine. Everything's great. I'm baffled. Because like I said, anyone who has spent any serious time in the country working with their military, any one of us could have and did and have been saying like, hey, we've got concerns that this country is going to fall apart. Taliban are going to take over. It's going to take no time at all. And that message, that mindset, not even one person in the room was like, hey, sir, we need to plan for the contingency, or we need to take this seriously. And, even the president admitted the other day in his address, not to bother him from his vacation at Camp David, but coming out and he said, yeah, we admit this happened a little faster than we thought it would. It's like, dude, this happened way super fast. And I am appalled and I am shocked that the bullshit you were saying even just 1 month ago about everything was going to be fine. Did you actually believe that? Were they just telling you that? Did you have a bunch of yes men? Did people try to tell you and you get what you pay for and you didn't believe them? Like, what happened here? But then he went on to say like, oh, well, we had different contingencies and plans for different things. And it's like, well, where the fuck was the contingency for, I don't know, this? The Taliban within a week, basically taking all the major provincial capitals, encircling Kabul. Like, where was that contingency plan? Like, they're like, oh, well, we got reports that if the Taliban were going to take over, it would probably, start to heat up within like 90 days, or it might take several months before they start making real progress. Like, well, dude, what about, okay, so you were planning so starry-eyed and hopeful on that. Where's the contingency of what we're facing now? I'm blown away. So going back to the dam that's about to burst example, what we should have been doing, knowing the dam was going to burst, being told the dam was going to burst, well understanding that, months and months ago, we should have been evacuating people, get people out, get these visas processed for these good Afghan people that have worked and put their neck on the line for us and are in serious risk if they stay in the country under a Taliban government. Let's get these people out. Let's get Americans out. Let's get interpreters out. Let's get these people out so we're not having to watch, a mass beheading in a public square of all these interpreters, that we don't have to have Americans in Taliban custody for ransom on the ground. Like, let's get these people the fuck out of there. But no, instead, it just, whether they didn't want to believe the dam was going to burst or they didn't want to believe the dam was going to burst this fast for whatever reason, or maybe just complete leadership failure, whatever it was, it's like now the dam starts bursting. Chunks of concrete are flying, the water's flowing out. And now it's like, oh shit, call the evacuation order. It's like, okay, we can get some people out, but dude, the dam is bursting right now. We don't have time anymore. We can get some people out, but inevitably there's going to be some people left behind that are going to get flooded and drown in this thing. The time to evacuate everyone we're past that, dude. The dam is bursting now. So if you didn't want to believe it was going to burst, or you didn't think it was going to happen this fast, however we got here, we are here. And inevitably people are going to be left behind. And then, how crazy is this? The Taliban moves into Kabul. Ashraf Ghani, the president of Afghanistan, fucking just bounces on Sunday. He leaves to United Arab Emirates. He's gone. So now you have all these Afghan soldiers that have a dubious level of combat capability. They do outnumber the Taliban, and they do have better weapons and capabilities than the Taliban. By and large, Taliban just walking into Kandahar, walking into Herat, walking into all these places, just taking it. Afghan army, Afghan police are laying down their weapons. Some guys are burning their uniforms and running away. Some guys are like joining them. Taliban rolling up on Afghan army airfields that have fully functional Black Hawks and Mi-8 helicopters and Little Bird helicopters, and like, hey, this helicopter is seaworthy. It can fly. You know how to fly it. America sent you to the United States for a couple of years to learn how to fly it. You can fly it. Would you like to join? And they say yes. And now we get videos of Taliban soldiers having fast egress and moving around the battlefield in a fucking helicopter, and helicopters, that'd be plural, being flown by former Afghan pilots from the Afghan army that have now switched sides and joined the Taliban. Or, if giving some benefit of the doubt, maybe some of them had a gun pointed at their head and like, you are going to fly this helicopter and take us where we want it to go. Whatever it is, under no circumstances should we have a Taliban flying in fucking helicopters that we bought, being flown by Afghan pilots that we sent to America to train them how to fly and then sent them back to go fight. Under no circumstances should we have pictures of Taliban hanging out with UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters. Under no circumstances should we have Taliban hanging out with motherfucking drones. American-made drones. These are not like the Global Hawks or the Predators. They're observation drones. But still, expensive, sensitive equipment that under no circumstances should we be seeing the Taliban hanging out with drones and helicopters. Not to mention, just God knows how many thousands, tens of thousands of M4 carbines, M16s, 240 machine guns. I've seen Mark 48s, 249s. God knows how many small arms they got their hands on, 50 cals. Not to mention, by the way, Humvees, Max Pro MRAPs, MATVs, American vehicles. And I'm just like, what the fuck is this? and Taliban surrounding Karzai Airport, which I'm sure is about to be renamed the second we leave. So U.S. troops, 6,000 troops sent into Kabul at the airport, encircled by Taliban, only holding the airport, trying to manage the fuck show that is all of these Afghans and Americans that are jumping over walls and storming the gates to get into the airport and onto the airfield. Up to and including, I'm sure you guys have seen it, the video of Afghans hanging on to the outside of a C-17 airframe. And the even further horrific footage of, surprise, surprise, bodies falling from the fucking sky. Now, I want you to think about the headspace of that real quick. You're an Afghan interpreter. You've spent 7 years with faithful service and all these accommodations and letters of thanks and Department of Defense paperwork. You've applied for your visa. You've been applying for it since 2018. State Department, for whatever reason, has been dragging ass. They still haven't processed your, special immigrant visa for service rendered to the U.S. military and risking their own lives and their families to do it for us. And you still can't get a visa. And you manage to finally get through the Taliban blockade outside the airport, where they're shooting at people, whipping and beating people who are trying to climb into the airport. You finally get over the wall, and then you find an aircraft that's taxiing, about to take off. You don't know if this is the last plane or the second to last plane. You don't know anything. You don't know if there's more planes coming. But what you do know is if you stay in this country, because the Americans are obviously just about to leave. And if you stay in this country, the Taliban are going to give you a horrific, torturous death. So you're dead. You're going to die if you stay. You know that. There's no way out. But you don't know how many planes the Americans are going to keep flying. And you see a plane about to take off and you're like, fuck it. If I stay, I'm going to get tortured to death, get my head cut off. I'm dying. So I'm going to jump on the outside of this jet aircraft, hang on for dear life, and just hope to God this is going to work out, because if I stay, I die. If I get on this thing, I fall off the plane, I die. But there's a slight chance I may be able to hang on. Maybe. I don't know, but I'm going to try. That's desperation, people. That's desperation in a way I'm so glad most Americans do not understand. That's insane. So they're hanging on. Surprise, surprise, bodies raining from the fucking sky. Horrific footage taken from inside the plane of an Afghan dude that got caught in the door that closes the landing gear. And for those who don't know how a C-17, its landing gear goes up, it's got like these side doors that open up that you could like sit on. But once it takes off, those wheels go up and the doors close down. So the seat that you just had on the ground is gone, literally pulled up from under you. And these doors open up on the sides and then they close again just to get it all in. And there's a fucking dude stuck in that door with his body like a rag doll in these crazy winds from footage from the inside of the plane. This is fucking insane. Disgraceful. Disgusting. Insane. That we would do this to people who put their lives on the line and faithfully helped and served us for years. And they survived. How many interpreters do you think have died in combat going on missions with us? So now we're back. We've managed to have some stability at the airport. We are continuing to fly planes. I saw the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, just approved commercial companies to fly into Kabul as part of the airlift if they want to, and if they get DoD approval, which they're going to get. So hopefully we'll have more planes coming in, but here's the big fucking problem. If you are an interpreter with your wife and kids and you're in hiding, legitimately in hiding, like Anne Frank style, you are hiding, and maybe you're down in Kandahar. Maybe you're in literally any place in the country besides Kabul. How the fuck are you getting to the airport without getting seen? And trust me, they know who you are. They know. Plenty of people are going to tell me, yeah, he was an interpreter. And they might even know you by name and face. You don't think the Taliban are doing information collection? You don't think they're looking at social media? They're looking at photos. They're looking at names. They're gathering information from locals of whatever town or city. And hey, who are the interpreters? Where are they? Do you know who they are? What do they look like? Oh, they're going to know. So, yeah, the flights have continued, but how many American citizens and how many interpreters or Afghan enablers, how many of them are not around Kabul? And even if they can get themselves to Kabul through all the Taliban checkpoints, along whatever roads they have to take to get to Kabul, assuming they make it there alive and they're not detained and kidnapped and set aside for later. Imagining that they make it to Kabul, they have a huge Taliban barricade, human chain, and checkpoints all around the airport. From what I understand, the Taliban are letting foreigners through, like Americans, French, whatever, because their angle is they just want to get foreigners out of the country. They don't want foreigners in Afghanistan. But if you're an Afghani, they're not letting you go through the airport. You're going to have to run past their bullets and razor wire and jump over walls just to try to get into the airport. By the way, 6,000 U.S. troops surrounded on all sides by Taliban. That's not ideal, to say the least. So inevitably, we knew the dam was going to burst. People were saying it was going to burst. And the administration either didn't want to believe it was going to burst this fast or whatever, however we got here. But now the dam is bursting. And now they're trying to get people out. And there's so many people spread out throughout the country that have no hope of ever getting to Kabul. And even if they can get to Kabul, are they going to get past the Taliban to get into the airport? And if they do that, how long are we going to keep these flights going? All of this is leading to the fact that we're not going to get everybody out. I mean, I've come to terms with that since Sunday. We are not going to be able to get everyone out. And there are so many people who deserve the immigrant visa, who put in that faithful service to work with us and risked everything to do it for years. And have been trying and trying and trying. And then the bullshit about the embassy of like, oh, we're evacuating most of the embassy personnel, but we're still going to leave like a core diplomatic element at the embassy to work with the Afghan government. Okay, it was like literally 8 hours later, the next press conference was, actually what we're doing is burning all documents. We're taking down the American flags. We're destroying radios and equipment. And there will be no embassy personnel. We're evacuating the embassy in Afghanistan. No. Okay, so like 6 or 8 hours ago, we were going to leave a core diplomatic team of several hundred people at the embassy, but now the whole thing is going to get gutted and burned down. And then this is the cherry on top of this shit Sunday. You ready for this? We were pleading with the Taliban, saying, hey, please don't burn down our embassy. If you burn down our embassy, then we're not going to recognize you as a legitimate government. And this will also cut off any future possibility of us ever giving you money or rendering aid. And I was like, you must be outside your fucking mind. First of all, we're basically begging the Taliban not to burn down our embassy. And then moreover, if they do, then that cuts off the possibility of us ever cutting them a check in the future. Why the fuck would we give the Taliban money? For any reason, why? In the future, why? Why would that ever? We don't have any bargaining chips. We don't have any leverage. The Taliban have the country and they know it. They don't need us to recognize them as a legitimate government. They've already got offers from China. They've already got offers from Iran. It's also kind of strange that those countries have no need to evacuate their embassies, and they're still there in Kabul. The Russians, their embassy is fine. Isn't it strange? So does the Taliban really need us to recognize them as a legitimate country when China has already offered to do it? Russia's going to do it. Iran, Pakistan, everyone in the area is going to recognize them as a legitimate government of Afghanistan. Why? We have no leverage. And again, we knew this was going to happen, or we should have known this was going to happen. There's only 20 years of learning curve to find that out. So why did we wait this long to get our people out? And by our people, I mean Americans, and I mean Afghan interpreters and enablers, those in danger for the service they did and worked with us. The whole thing is a fucking mess. And it was like Monday night, I was just like, I just need to have, a beer, just a cigar, hanging out by myself. And I was like talking with some of the guys I deployed with, talking with some of my buddies who were also there at different time periods or different places in the country. And we're all checking in on each other. Side note, if you know anybody, friend or family that deployed to Afghanistan at any point in time in the U.S. military, just give them a call, give them a text, check in on them, make sure they're okay. Because I'll tell you, as an Afghan veteran, we are not fucking okay. We are not happy with this. We met and worked with some really dedicated dudes who risked everything to work with us, and we're not paying it back. We're not getting them on the back end. We're leaving them quite literally to die. And yeah, we're going to get some out. We've got some Afghans out. We're going to continue to get more out. But compared to how many people are out there that helped us, that are going to die, that are at risk, compared to how many we're going to be able to get out by the end of this shit show, it's not enough. And it's disgusting. And again, on the international stage, countries allied with us starting to think a little, second guessing their alliance with us, having to evaluate their own contingencies of, okay, well, if something bad happens, even though U.S. says they're with us, if they decide, surprise, we're not with you, just like they did to the Afghans, what do we do? Maybe we should start shopping around with Russia. Maybe they would be a more reliable partner. I mean, geographically, they're closer to us. We could probably trust, them to back us up if we need it. So in the end, it's gross. And my Afghan platoon medic, Doc Wayne, his family are Hmong people. His family, they were involved. So they were literally at the 1975 Saigon evacuation. And he had a post the other night. Actually, let me pull it up, and I'll read it to you guys. I don't think he would mind. And you guys can go ahead because I'm finishing up with my Afghan rant. But if you guys have any questions or comments or anything, let me know. Okay, he said, I'd like to start this post with a small anecdote. My sister once asked my grandma if she was scared to leave Vietnam during the fall of Saigon. My grandma said, no, I felt we had to follow where the hope was. I think, now he's back to his own words, I think the thing that hurts the most are the people who are still there suffering. The schools, hospitals, relations built are in jeopardy. The women and the children are dying in record numbers. I didn't expect the entire country to be stable. I just hoped for a little more time and hope that the changes could have remained. I know there's hope somewhere. It's just hard to find the hope in all this right now. This is worse than the fall of Saigon. The United States evacuated 130,000 South Vietnamese people. So far, 2,000 Afghans have made it to the U.S., and he posted this on the 16th. It's hard not to feel like we failed them. My family spoke about the evacuation of Saigon, the fear, the hope. I just didn't think they would have to see it again in their lifetime. What do you say to that? What is there to say to that? 130,000 South Vietnamese people we managed to get out of Vietnam before the North Vietnamese army took over. We had helicopters landing on aircraft carriers, and the helicopter it got to the end and it got desperate. There were so many people on the deck. It got to the point that the helicopter would land, the people would get off, the pilots would get off, the crew chief and the crewmen would get off, and they would literally shove that thing overboard into the ocean just to make more room for refugees and still have space to land the incoming birds that were still coming in. Yeah, Saigon was a fiasco. It was a last ditch, holy shit, evacuation attempt. And I don't know why we failed so hard and just repeated the same thing. A holy shit evacuation attempt, people hanging on aircraft, bodies raining from the sky, people stuck in the side of the plane, flapping in the wind, people jumping over the gates, so many people all around the country that are not going to be able to make Kabul. It's just disgusting, and it's frustrating. And for my 9-month deployment in Afghanistan, we lost 26 Americans, 12 of which happened on our airfield in Jalalabad. My second day in Afghanistan, the C-130 went down on the airfield. Boom, Americans, contractors on board, and some Afghan soldiers in a tower where the aircraft crashed. We had 6 airmen that got killed. Motorcycle, vehicle-borne IED blew them up outside of Bath. We had the Marja situation going down. We had Doctors Without Borders getting smoked up in Kunduz. Dude, the amount of violence and death and crazy shit that was happening just in my little 9-month snapshot of being there. Amplify that by a factor of 20 years. And then we had countries like Denmark, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, all these NATO partner countries that had faith in us and our cause in Afghanistan to support us. And maybe they didn't fully understand our mission, but they're like, hey, the Americans are going in good faith. We're going to send our troops over there. Same thing. Their troops also took casualties. Their troops, their veterans today have just as much problems as we have. PTSD, physical, mental, emotional issues from losing guys, fighting, killing, and all the crazy shit. And, it begs the question, for what? So I think it definitely helps me have a better connection with and a better understanding with the Vietnam veterans that we still have alive today. As an Afghan veteran, talking to those guys, it's like they kind of know and you kind of know that you're in a similar boat. Now, Vietnam vets, when they came home, the treatment they got from the American public was disgraceful, was shameful, especially because so many of those guys were drafted and they went against their choice, but they had to go or else jail or move to Canada. And they were enough of a man not to run away and to, hey, this is what I'm called to do. I'm going to do it. And they get home just treated like shit. But from the kinetic sense of it, I think we have the bridge just got a lot closer to gap. That gap got a lot smaller between understanding for us. So, takeaways, worked with some incredible people, American, NATO, Afghan, while I was there. We did get to hand out water, hand out food, help where we could. And that wasn't even the primary reason we were there, but to help where we can help. Our platoon was very big. Our company was very big on that American mindset of, it's like, even though this is a war and we're soldiers and we are combatants in this war, that doesn't mean we're not Americans. Like, we're still going to help you out. We're still going to take you to the UNICEF camps where you can get vaccinations, you can get food, you can get medical treatment. We're not going to target your homes. We're not going to target your mosques. And we didn't. We're not going to unnecessarily cause mayhem and destruction for no reason. Like, we're Americans. That's not how we do business. At least I can take away that, there were people where we eased their suffering and helped them out. There were girls that could actually go to school. There were women who were actually starting to take some leadership in their government and parliament as judges, as whatever. That there was, at least for the time we were there, Al-Qaeda was decimated. They were like the Black Death, dude. Nobody really wanted to work with them because if they work with them, then U.S. drones are going to follow. We were keeping that shit at bay. We did what we were asked to do. We went where we went. We did the most good that we could do where we could find an opportunity to do so. And that was that. And in the end, this is what we got. I still don't regret my decision to join. I don't, I'm not like regretting going to Afghanistan. I'm not regretting my service. It just kind of, just kind of sucks, to put it lightly. But yeah, the situation is messed up, and I also hope that things get better moving forward in the future. I desperately hope we can get as many Americans and Afghan interpreters and people out. But looking at the writing on the wall, we're not going to get everyone out, and they're going to pay the price for it. And don't be surprised in the coming weeks, if you see Taliban reprisals, they're probably going to make a point to ensure that every one of them has M16s or M4s, that there's no AKs. They're using American weapons to gun down the people that they found. There's going to be, in the coming weeks and months, there's going to be some real nasty shit. Just get ready. Because the second we leave that airport, we're done with the airlift operation. U.S. military, U.S. everything is out. Taliban takes the airport and they rename it to whatever they're going to call it. And we're done. That's when the real shit's going to start. Right now, the Taliban is sort of, I don't want to say minding their manners, but at least with us, they're kind of not trying to start any shit. It's like, dude, we waited 20 years for this, for the Americans to leave. We don't want to fuck it up at the last minute. We don't want to incite them or attack Americans. And now, guess what? There's more Americans coming back, or there's more bombs dropping. So in a way, I think, the Taliban is kind of playing that card for now, not trying to get too crazy and not try to do anything too crazy with us, because they want us gone. And as soon as we're gone, that's when the crazy is going to happen. Says me. That's my prediction. But anyway, appreciate you guys for staying up late. You guys had some great questions. I had a whole set of emailed questions you guys sent me and some video comments that I was going to cover. But between State of the Second Amendment updates with me and the channel, what's going on, and then all of this Afghanistan talk, I think we've definitely run the clock. But appreciate you guys who are live. Also appreciate you guys who are coming in later, days or weeks, months, maybe years after this. And, you guys are watching this now. Snapshot in time. This is August 19th. And now we rolled into the 20th of 2021. Just one guy's opinion. I don't work at the Pentagon. I'm not in the CIA. I'm not a general or some dude. I'm just your garden variety reconnaissance scout, E5. That's what I did. That was it. And that's my perspective. I think it's shameful. It had to end, but it didn't have to end like this. Not at all. But Thank you guys for being here. And yeah, I'm still hopeful. I still am hopeful as a country that we can turn things around in the future. Lessons learned. I am hoping, and I actually think there's some pretty good hope here, but I'm pretty hopeful that in the future, if something's going down in Nigeria or something's going down in Libya, or take your pick, something's going down in some country, and our elected officials are contemplating military action, I think this lesson of Afghanistan, I think every lawmaker, every politician is going to think in the back of their heads, and the constituents that are going to write and call them, of which their jobs depend on, are going to be calling and writing them, myself included, that we need to have a plan. We need to cut the shit with this nation building shit. We need to go in with a mission, dare I say, Desert Storm style. We have a defined mission. This is the mission. Let's go in, kick ass, mission accomplished. Okay, everyone go home. So, in the future, positive note, I think it's going to change things as we move forward, because inevitably there's going to be situations that show up. People are going to be talking about military action. Inevitably, it's going to happen. I just hope in the future, when these situations come up, that we take a long, good, hard look at Afghanistan and really contemplate and define what would we like to do there. How much are we willing to do? Let's not forget Afghanistan and what we did to those people and what we had our troops there for 20 years. And I'm just hoping it's a very hard lesson learned for the future. But I am hopeful that the message was received. I mean, the videos and pictures we were seeing and are still yet to see from Afghanistan. I mean, this thing was a fiasco. I would say officially, for the record, this is worse than Saigon. This is not going away. This will be a permanent stain on the Biden administration. And this video is about more important stuff like Afghanistan, the Afghan people. But taking a quick aside to politics, I don't think the American people are happy with this, to say it lightly. I mean, it's bad when even CNN is coming after Biden on this. I don't think 2022 is going to look good for them when they're doing shit like this. So, but more importantly, what I really care about is I just hope in the future we remember this and we act accordingly and we don't forget the lessons learned here. And I would like to end by saying, let's not forget the people we lost. All the American, NATO, Afghan interpreters, everyone that we lost and everyone that got wounded in this. Don't forget them, because, we all went over there and we all knew stuff could happen, and it happened to them. It happened at random. And, I still do not believe they died in vain, because they knew what they believed in. We were all there for a reason, My generation fighting, the longest war in American history, and we did that on a volunteer military. We didn't have to use the draft to do it. It's something to be pretty proud of. So anyway, I want you guys to keep the faith, no doom and gloom. Just remember, there is a lot of good stuff still. And just like Doc Wynn said when I just read the post he did the other day, go where the hope is. And be the change that you want to see. If there's no hope around you, be that hope. You can change anything. I mean, I'm 32 years old, and yet again, I'm changing careers, going back to school, being an EMT, doing something, that I've never done before, trying to eventually get to a fire department. I mean, there is no excuse not to fucking try. If it's what you want to do and it makes you happy, then fucking go for it. Do it. And actually, I wasn't going to bring it out, but there was a Navy SEAL named Marcus Luttrell, and he wrote this book, Lone Survivor. eventually became a movie. I'm sure some of you have seen it. Hopefully you've read the book. I got this book from Marcus Luttrell, and he signed it for me. But he came and spoke at Virginia Military Institute, where I went to college. He came and spoke to us one year, and it was insane. And it lasted for like 2 hours, and he just laid it down and answered our questions. And at the end, he's like, I don't give a fuck. I'll stay as long as I need to. Like, if you guys want to talk and chill, like, I can sign books if you want. We can hang out, like, whatever. So I'll leave you with his words that he wrote to me. And I'm going to cover my last name there, most of it. I don't know if you can read that, but it says, never quit ever. And I keep this book on the top of my bookshelf because I remember that day. I remember hearing him speak, and it was weird because there was a lot of us, obviously a senior military college with someone like him rolling out. So there was a lot of people to talk to, but he talked to each of us like we were a person, like it was not an assembly line. He was genuine. And that his words always, never quit ever. It's as simple as that. There. If I had just used his words from the beginning, we could have saved 3 hours, right? But I want you guys to still be hopeful. Still a lot to be proud of. Still a lot to be hopeful for. And it is really time to end this. Appreciate you guys being here. For those of you guys who are watching later, thanks for watching this. Sorry it's 3 hours. Hopefully it's been good. And I will catch you guys next time. All right. Take care, everybody.